Thanks for joining us, and we will go ahead and get started.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Welcome to our first budget work session of the fiscal year 2027 cycle. Today's focus will be on capital projects and financing. Here's a current look at our budget meeting cycle. We held a retreat on November 13th. We are here today for our capital work session, and we'll reconvene on March 24th for a look at the first pass budget. We will return on April 16th, and then one more work session on April 28th to review our fire district plan and the fiscal year 2026 projection. The budget message with a recommend budget is planned at our first regular meeting in May on the 5th, followed by a public hearing 2 weeks later at our scheduled meeting, and adoption at our first scheduled meeting in June on the 2nd. Today we are talking about capital improvement, our existing plan, our existing projects, our capital improvement plan, vehicles, and how to pay for it all. We'll start our morning with Budget Analyst Jay Shee and General Services Project Manager Ronnie Lunsford providing updates on our established projects. You have a handout in your packet on existing projects that you can follow along with if you choose. We will hear from a few of our subject matter experts on their projects as well. We'll then talk about our draft 7-year capital improvement plan and the projects we see on the horizon. You have this draft CIP as a handout in your packet. Please note that we are still working with this information, and the plan we bring with the recommended budget may look different than this draft today. Afterwards, our fleet manager, Jake Clote, will talk about vehicles and fleet management. We'll take a break and then hear from our finance team, Matt Evans, and CFO Melissa Moore on capital financing, or how do we pay for all our capital needs. Then we'll talk about our next steps and wrap up. Going to hand this over to Jay and Ronnie.
Thanks, John. Good morning, Commissioners. Morning. So to start off, before we get into capital project updates and our 7-year capital improvement plan, just wanted to start with some kind of context setting around what we define as a capital project here at the county, what our capital improvement plan is, and how we evaluate capital project requests. So to start with, what is a capital project? So at the county, we define a capital project as a construction, renovation, maintenance, or demolition project, or an acquisition of land or another asset valued at or above $100,000 and has a useful life of at least 5 years. We also include significant information technology projects as well as capital projects. So how do we plan for and prioritize capital projects across the county? We do that through our capital improvement plan, or CIP. The county CIP is a long-range fiscal management and planning tool that identifies needed capital projects, prioritizes those projects, and provides a schedule for project timing, and identifies funding sources for projects over the next 7 years. Given the large resources demanded by capital projects, having a robust plan is important to responsibly take on debt, as well as anticipate future operating costs and capacity constraints. The CIP is also where recommendations from various standalone assessments and plans that the county has conducted or is currently developing that require capital infrastructure and investment come together in one place to be identified, aligned, and prioritized. So some examples of assessments or plans driving capital project requests include our comprehensive facility assessment that was completed in FY2021, which was a study looking at all county facilities, including libraries and the detention center, and resulted in a 15-year plan to make the best use of our buildings in order to reduce maintenance costs, lease costs, and provide most effective service delivery. We also have an EMS assessment that was completed in FY2023 with recommendations on for the construction of new EMS bases and deployment of ambulances to improve EMS service delivery. Additionally, there are capital needs associated with goals in our recently adopted 2030 strategic plan and Helene recovery plan. And we're also underway on a recreation, greenways, and open space master plan and are expecting recommendations when that's completed to result in capital project requests as well. Should also note that beyond assessments and plans, there's also other pathways for projects onto the CIP, such as responding to regulatory mandates or needs related to continuity or expansions of service. So to facilitate the development of the CIP, we conduct our capital request and review process in conjunction with the annual budget process. Requests are made by departments in the fall and are evaluated by our capital review team, which is a multidisciplinary team with representation from departments across the county. Projects are scored and evaluated by this team based on the following criteria you see on the slide, which is based on Government Finance Officer Association, or GFOA, best practices, as well as reviewing criteria used by comparable jurisdictions. So these include looking at, whether the project's required to meet a regulatory mandate, whether the project is providing a health and safety benefit or addressing a health and safety concern, the extent to which a project improves service delivery, operating impacts, how the project aligns with the strategic plan, and project readiness, among other measures. So that's a little bit about, like I said, our, what we define as a capital project, our CIP, how we review capital projects. So with that, I'm going to move into kind of the meat of our capital section, which is centered around first providing updates on major or notable capital projects that are already adopted and underway at the county, so current projects. And then second, we'll look towards the future and provide an overview of future planned capital projects on our draft 7-year CIP. So that's our roadmap for this section. I will jump into the capital project updates. So starting with those, at present, we have over 60 capital projects that total nearly $200 million. You have, like John mentioned, you have in your packets copies of a list of current capital projects with project budgets mapped out by year and summarized by funding source as well. Just as a note, on the handout, debt-funded projects that we have yet to issue debt for are highlighted in yellow. That's something that will be helpful to reference as we move to the capital financing portion of our work session later this morning. You have also been provided a link to an online dashboard that provides project descriptions, timelines, and updates on county capital projects as well. So to guide our discussion this morning, we have categorized capital projects into the following buckets you see on the slide and chosen to focus in on major or notable capital projects within each bucket. So categories include public safety projects, which total around $39 million, include courthouse and detention center maintenance and renovations, along with construction of EMS bases. Outside of public safety related projects, we have additional categories of projects such as new facilities, which total around $15 million, includes our recently completed Fleet and General Services complex. Facility renovations, which total around $14 million, and includes the renovation of 35 Woodfin to co-locate forward-facing departments in one place. We also have major maintenance, which totals around $14 million, and that includes the tasks that I was mentioning in our comprehensive facility assessment, such as roofing, HVAC, and plumbing replacements and repairs. We also have new infrastructure, which totals around $19 million. That includes projects to place solar on schools and install EV charging infrastructure, technology projects, which total around $12 million, includes implementing a modern fire station alerting system for county fire departments. And we also have parks, greenways, and natural resources projects, some of which leverage outside funding sources, such as grants, in addition to county dollars. And that includes, some examples include Inca Recreation Destination, Woodfin Greenway, and the Stream Restoration Project in Barnardsville. And lastly, we have solid waste projects, which are funded through our Solid Waste Enterprise Fund rather than our general fund. And that includes Phase 8 expansion of the county construction and demolition landfill. So I'll now turn it over to Ronnie to talk through more specific updates for the first couple categories, starting with public safety projects.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. Chair Edwards. I hope y'all are doing well this morning. As John and Jay said, my name is Ronnie Lunsford. I'm one of 3 project managers within the General Services Department at Buncombe County. Robert Brown, Scott Metcalf, and myself share the load on the projects I'll be talking about today. And I say that to not only make you not feel as sorry for me for the workload we have, but to let you know that if you have specific questions on some of their projects, I may have to reach out and phone a friend to get those answered today. As we move through these updates and the 7-year CIP coming up later, I wanted to make note that on these slides in the left-hand margin, you will see those various studies and assessments and plans that Jay referred to kind of help guide you to where those came from. Like, how did we get to needing to do the backup 911 center? It's in that margin to kind of help draw those ties. So jumping right in, public safety project. First up is the courthouse, and we have a lot of work taking place in an occupied, almost 100-year-old courthouse. And it's very difficult work to do. Obviously, it all is performed at night and on the weekends. That not only makes it hard to do the work, just because sourcing materials after hours is difficult, receiving materials is difficult, but also it costs a lot more money to do that work that way. We're paying shift differentials and that sort of thing to get the work done. So. First up, one thing I wanted to highlight, one project at the courthouse. You may have noticed on County Central last week, there was an article about electrical shutdown at the courthouse over the weekend. So we're upgrading the main switchgear in the basement of the historic courthouse. Switchgear is basically the first point power comes. So you think of your electric panel at your house, this is the same thing, but instead of being that big, it's about 10 foot wide, 8 foot tall, and about 6 foot deep. Instead of 200 amps of power, it's around 3,000 amps of power, so a large piece of equipment. We did perform that shutdown this weekend. We got the new gear tied in, and crews will work over the next couple of weeks to move all of the branch circuits and demo the old gear out. The cost of that work comes in just over $600,000 to get that done. Next, at the courthouse, we're doing a chilled water pipe replacement. Probably seen this going on for the last 1.5 to 2 years. The south side of the building is complete, and crews are working on the north side now. That piping replacement, chill water is basically what cools the building. The piping was black iron steel pipe that over the years has deteriorated, causing leaks. In order to keep from having a catastrophic failure overnight or something, those are being replaced with polypropylene or plastic pipe that not only doesn't corrode and deteriorate, but it has better insulative value, so we don't get the condensation and nuisance drips and leaks from that. There's about 6 offices left on that north side of the building, and that work will be complete also. It should wrap up this month. That cost of work is around $800,000 to do. And then Tuesday at your meeting, you noticed there was a contract approval for a plumbing infrastructure project at the courthouse. That's similar to the chill water piping. The plumbing infrastructure there is galvanized steel and starting to fail as well. So those need to be replaced. Also, to avoid something overnight catastrophic where we come in and we have a ton of water in the building. So we chose to use a CM at risk delivery method on that project just because we are in a 100-year-old building and there's probably a lot of unknowns as we move through. Project was bid to subcontractors, was within budget. Like I said, Tuesday's meeting, you approved the contract, so work will begin soon on that as well. Moving on from the courthouse to the detention center, this is another facility that's difficult to work in for same reasons other than it's 24/7. So nights and weekends is not an option there, right? Equipment at the building needs to be replaced much quicker because of being 24/7. And so we end up having to do these projects at a much faster pace than you would a typical commercial building. Another factor we have to consider at the detention center is the population, detainees there. There are times when we need to move folks out of a housing unit to perform that work, and if we don't have the flex space, that's not possible. So we have to kind of work around that as we move. A couple of items there that we're currently working on, though, are shower replacements. We have 16 of 48 showers completed, and we're in a holding pattern on the remainder due to that population I was talking about. We have to wait till the population gets low enough to shift folks around so that we can go into that unit and perform the work. We've also replaced the hot water storage tanks in the building. Those hot water storage tanks are used to provide hot water for the kitchen and those showers we were just talking about. We were able to get those successfully changed out. The old ones were over 30 years old, original to the facility. It just started leaking and needed to be changed. Hot water is a critical part of the facility. The cost of that was around $429,000. The shower replacements was around $760,000 to do that work. And then we're about 85% complete on a fire alarm panel replacement. Fire alarm panel, obviously a critical device in a facility, especially one like a jail where folks are sleeping and staying all the time. In order to ensure that those systems work properly as they age, they have to be upgraded and replaced. So we're about 85% through with that one, the cost of around $256,000. Moving on to our 911 backup center. So like noted in the column, this is a regulatory mandate that we have a backup 911 center. County had always used space at City of Asheville's building. Due to some facility issues they had there, we needed our own. Fortunately, we had space at 35 Woodfin to get those folks down into the basement. Work there is expected to wrap up in March, so really close to having our own space to move those folks into. Then to the EMS assessment. EMS, as you all know, did a study to show where they have decreased response times, where we need to improve upon those. And so we've started moving forward with the addition of EMS bases. First up, the Swannanoa EMS base. You all were probably at a groundbreaking a couple of months ago out there. And so you know that we have started work. Site work is ongoing there. And we expect to be complete in December. Once the building is complete, there's about 2 months of advanced commissioning for our high performance building resolution. We'll do those to make sure all the infrastructure is working efficiently. And then we hope to move them in February of 27. In 40 McCormick Place EMS base. So as the General Services Building Division moved out of there into our new facility on Riverside Drive, we emptied that building. It would be a great location for an EMS base. Proximity to the hospital allows ambulances to restock there, as well as dispatch some ambulances. We have design work completed on that building, but during Helene, we did have a small slide area behind the facility that has to be repaired before we really work on it. So once that repair is made, we should be ready to start turning wrenches on the EMS base.
And to clarify, that will be in lieu of the base from our Woodfin building here next door? No?
I know we'll still.
Okay,
Still.
okay. We'll run both, okay.
And in the West Regional base, so to reduce response times to West Asheville, a base is needed on that side. And so land has been purchased in the West Asheville area, and we're currently in the designer selection process for the EMS base in that area.
And this is for the West Regional, for the West Region of Buncombe County?
Yes, it will be, yes.
And you said, so we have the land and the design is complete. Thank you.
So moving to some new facilities, like Jay mentioned earlier, and some of you were at the ribbon cutting for the Fleet and General Services Complex. It's one of my favorites because it's where I go every day to work. But so the building was our first under our new high performance building standards. It is LEED Gold equivalent and purposefully designed to be all electric. It has a solar array, as you can see in that photo on the right, that offsets approximately 80% of the energy use there. It's the first time since I have been with General Services for 23 years, that all three divisions, building, grounds, and fleet, have been under one roof. I think it was definitely the right choice. Mike Mace, our director, sitting back there, would probably agree. It just allows us to be much more efficient and communicate more effectively to the entire team. And then the storage facility on here, to completely vacate our property on Valley Street, which is primarily now used for storage since folks have moved to 35 Woodford. We need a place to store the county's stuff. And so we're currently in the design process to do that, to build a building on the same property where the General Services building is, the expired landfill. So it's a property we already own. We don't have to purchase that. And that is currently in design. And in the Parks office, Recreation Services also in the Allport building, so we need to find them a home to get out of that property to be able to reuse it. We have some space out at the Buncombe County Sports Park at APAC Drive since General Services Grounds Division has moved into their new building. And so it makes sense to get Rec Services onto one of their largest parks. We currently have a designer on board for that. We're in a little bit of a holding pattern, and we'll talk about why here a little bit later in some of our future CIP discussions. So facility renovations. You're probably all aware of the huge renovation we did at 35 Woodland to move all of those forward-facing offices into there. Permits and inspections, planning and development, environmental health, election services, tax assessments, and tax collections are all in that facility now. So it's a one-stop shop for the community. The only thing remaining is the boardroom area on the lower level, and it is scheduled to be completed in March. And then 200 College Street renovation. So that's a two-part project. One is an exterior remediation of the facility, and one part is a renovation of the second floor to move some county offices to there. Exterior remediation, from the time the county purchased this building, we've had some water intrusions all around the building. We've done several exploratory projects to figure out why. It basically pointed us to, we need to remove the skin of this building, fix what's behind it, and put it back to stop that problem from happening. The facility was built in 2007, 2008 timeframe when there were a lot of builders in the area, let's put it that way. And not everything was done exactly the way it should be. So probably saw some communication late last week about starting this week, and then we found out literally the next day that we had some material delays and we're not going to be able to get started. We're still hoping to start that exterior on March 2nd.
Ronnie, we started before. Can you speak to that? Because we took her window out.
Terry's window, yeah, that was a whole different project, but yeah, we're going to try not to do that again, though, I promise. We won't put anything that's outside inside your office. Fingers crossed, right? And then the interior renovation will be to, like I said, move some county departments to the second floor and make use of space that was vacated by TD Bank. Because of site restrictions, parking and whatnot here at this site, we're not going to do both of those projects at the same time because that would drive everyone in the building nuts. So as soon as we can wrap up that exterior project, we'll move to the inside and start that. The exterior project, 6 months time frame, so we're hoping August, September of this year to get started on the interior. Major maintenance items, comprehensive facility projects, like Jay said, 5 or 6 years ago, we performed a comprehensive facility assessment that led us to a lot of these major maintenance projects. These are typically smaller ticket items, and more back of house, things you don't see every day, but that are critical to the facilities. With these, we have done things like replace sections of the electrical system at Lake Julian that's used for the Festival of Lights. We currently recently bid and are developing a contract for the IT server room, HVAC equipment replacement. And we have replaced components in several elevators throughout the county. You may remember a couple of years ago, we did the ones in this facility, so you probably had one down for a little while and we're stuck with one. Those are the type of projects that we get with the facility assessment. And then the library facility assessment, that assessment was performed at the same time as the comprehensive facility assessment, where we scored each branch library And then county made the decision that we would start renovating those from the lowest scoring facility on. Unfortunately, the lower scoring facilities were not owned by the county, so it made work there difficult. And you may remember several meetings ago, the board voted to move on to the next library that we did own, which was West Asheville Library. And so we currently have a design team on board and are in the process of contracting with them to start the design there. That design would basically be replacing some exterior components that have been damaged for a while, as well as a new circulation desk and some interior finishes inside the library. And then countywide roofing and parking deck repair. So with the portfolio of facilities that the county has, there will probably always be a roof somewhere that needs replaced. And so those are the things we do with that. We've currently replaced roofs at several of the community pool buildings, the landfill scale house and administration building, and 35 Woodfin Street. Fortunately, on our roofs, y'all have approved a lot of money to take care of those. So I think, in my opinion, our roofing portfolio is really good for the county. We don't have a lot of roofing issues that a lot of municipalities and entities do. And for the parking deck repairs, the county has one precast parking deck located at 356 Biltmore Avenue. Those precast decks require a lot of routine inspections, maintenance items. That's essentially what this is. We just recently repaired or replaced a lot of the steel biscuits that go between those precast decks. If you've ever drove over a parking deck that kind of bounced every time you drove, that's a precast deck, and you just have to do a lot of maintenance on those.
You have a question, Mark?
No, I'm sorry. Where is this photo of the parking deck? Which one is that?
356 Biltmore Avenue.
Oh, okay. I got you. I didn't realize we owned that. Okay.
Yeah.
We own that building and that park.
Okay.
And then paving, similar to roofing, we have a lot of square footage of asphalt parking lots that see a lot of traffic, and those need to be repaved quite often. We have used this project to pave Buncombe County Sports Park out at APAC Drive, several of our branch libraries. We're getting ready to start paving out at North Buncombe Pool in that area. This is another project that you will likely see year after year on the CIP to just get more money to keep our parking lots in good condition.
And Ron, just a question for clarification before you move on. I was trying to find, you mentioned the West Asheville Library has been designed. I don't see that one on the capital improvement plan. I see Buncombe Library.
So it was just under the library facility assessment project. I'm not sure where it is on
So
that.
Okay.
if you go to the current capital project list, it would be under FY23 library renovation. Under,
I-23,
yeah,
okay, and it just says library renovation. Okay.
yep.
We may have bundled a couple of different locations into the project when we established it.
Yeah, you said the North Buncombe Pool, that's currently a gravel lot?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Finally getting that paid. So moving to new infrastructure, solar on public buildings and schools. To date, we have installed solar on approximately 50 sites with partnerships from AB Tech, Asheville City Schools, Buncombe County Schools, and local fire departments. I checked this morning before this meeting, and we have produced almost 14 gigawatt hours of electricity with those sites, which is 14 billion watts of electricity, watt hours with electricity. To put that into perspective, you could run 14 million refrigerators for an hour with the amount of power that we've produced from that solar. EV charging infrastructure. As the county acquires more EVs, we need to install charging infrastructure to support those vehicles. To date, we've installed approximately 20 chargers at locations across the county to help support permits and inspections, ag and land, solid waste, and library services that have those electric vehicles. We're also currently working on a project at the parking deck at 164 College to install more EV chargers there for county fleet. That project will put in 11 level 2 chargers and one dual port DC fast charger. There was a long lead time for the main electrical gear coming into there to support that, but it is scheduled to arrive this month, and once it's in, we can finish that up.
And Ronnie, where did you say that was going? I missed the first part.
164 College Street parking deck.
Thanks.
And then the shelter resiliency generator project. So this project would install generators at local high schools that would provide emergency power to the gymnasiums and in some cases the cafeterias as well. And those could be used as shelter locations in the event of an emergency. We currently have design for installation at Inca High, AC Reynolds, TC Robertson, and North Buncombe, and budget to support the installation at Inca High, which will hopefully be bid out soon. And you will see this one come up again later on as we continue that project.
And Ronnie, on the solar, I just want to clarify, because around the capital project, sometimes folks think that we're using the school capital funds to do the solar, and this is clearly from our general funds that we have done all the solar on schools.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Ronnie, to date, how much are we saving on the solar projects?
That would be a great question.
Do we know?
Jeremiah, if he were here.
We'll get that
We'll have to-
information.
Okay, yeah. 'cause
We
I'm
are
curious.
getting rebates. The schools actually do provide some
Good.
rebate, some funding back to us based on their savings, and that's part of their agreement. So we will definitely get that.
Can we add to that list as well? I'd be curious. I know we're going to talk a little bit about fleet, but can we talk about how much we're saving in gas costs with EV vehicles as well? We can maybe quantify that in any way?
That might be a more difficult number to get at.
We'll try.
Thank you.
Speaking of rebates, I'm sure Jeremiah's tracking it, but just a flag for any future-looking solar projects we have. The North Carolina Utilities Commission right now is debating, I think they're still debating whether to approve a Duke Energy request for a commercial building solar rebate program that would apply to local governments. So something that would reduce the cost of this in the future for us.
That?
So we're going to invite our IT director, Eric Rowell. He's going to talk to us about a couple of technology projects.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Stay there, Ronnie. You're gonna be right back.
I know.
A few moments from the Ronnie Show. I do have two slides. Really excited to present both of these. The first one here is our 911 RMS law records management. Where do you want me to be?
If you could set, so our cameras
I know, get up, Oh, I feel excited now. This is, the first one is our big, public safety project representing 26 agencies you see on the screen in 5 municipalities. This is the CAD system, the RMS system, the JMS system used by all the public safety agencies throughout the county.
So what does RMS stand for?
Go ahead.
What does RMS stand for?
Records management
I
system.
know, but you're using.
Jail management system. My apologies. They are up there. We did complete our RFP, so a really exciting process. This started about a year ago. We did demos, evaluation, scoring, contract negotiation. We have a signed contract as of last month, and that is really exciting. We'll be implementing, as you see on the screen, the Motorola Premier One suite is their flagship suite. That includes all those different applications. The picture you see on the screen would be the 3 big circles in the middle, and all the other ones are where we send data to and from these systems. So it's a big, large software environment with lots of data being shared and promoting general situational awareness and public safety. We kicked off this project on Tuesday of this week with Motorola. We got our project manager aligned, and we are be hitting it hard over the next month or so with business process review, getting all the agencies with our consultant, with the Motorola company, and we will start the process. It's going to be about an 18 to 24 month implementation, so that'll happen. Other big next step, y'all may remember we signed an interlocal agreement 3 years ago with all the municipalities and all the fire agencies, a service level agreement with the fire agencies that created this governance structure of our PSIP program. We will be renewing that with the new system and the new cost model. It is a revenue sharing cost model, so it's proportional based upon how much you use the system, how many law officers, how many fire apparatus and things like that for all the different agencies. So that's still to become, as we do have a cost. We have a cost now, and we'll be working towards our cost model for all the agencies. Are there any questions on this one?
Why is this a big deal?
Why is this a big deal? Well, this is our CAD system. This is our public safety system. We currently have it's a fairly antiquated product. It's got some issues.
What is CAS?
CAD is computer aided dispatch. Excuse me, the 911 system. These are just such common terms for me. Computer aided dispatch, right, 911. So it is putting us into a modern situational awareness, great data sharing, great auditing of that data sharing, et cetera. So
It's huge. Any questions?
I'm not going to pretend to understand half of what's on the screen here, but I guess to the second bullet regarding 911 and mobile communications, in what way might that improve some of the conditions we experienced with Helene and the various emergency services communication problems we had that day?
Well, our 911 center really didn't go down necessarily. Connectivity throughout the county was a huge issue, of course. So these mobile CAD terminals, this is the mobile part, this is what's in the vehicles themselves. This is where the 911 information comes on the computer screen, dispatch information, situational awareness information, notes, things like that. The reality is, when you don't have mobile infrastructure throughout the county, that's not going to work. Right. And so the next slide, though, we'll talk about some resiliency around communication and some things that we are doing. We already had the next project in the works. We've kind of pivoted post-Helene to do some stuff to bolster some of that communication resiliency.
I just want to say it's exciting to finally see this come to fruition. I think this was one of the first community meetings I attended with Matt and Tim in 2019. So excited to see that we're here today. Thanks.
And if I may offer some context, you threw so many acronyms that even as a lawyer, I'm sitting here like, I know I use these systems and I still, I will tell you, we were really excited. I know that we've talked a lot about the jail population. We talked a lot about jail management. Access to this is going to improve the sheriff's ability to address some of these things. The Behavioral Health Justice Collaborative and JRAC are particularly excited about this and how we can integrate all the things you're doing with 911, what first responders are getting when they receive it, how we're data sharing with our mental health partners. All those things are coming up in this, and you found a lot of really fancy words to say public safety response is going to get way better. Is that fair?
I hope it's really good today, but yes, the technology is going to get a little bit better. Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I'm just curious I know there's an emerging issue with people calling 911 and now that they can use FaceTime, like how we're using that. There's also concerns around 911 dispatch center employees having to see things, or already having to talk to these things. Is this going to integrate that at all or allow for video sharing with 911?
I'm not aware of FaceTime as an option for that, and that's a very separate protocol. The way our 911 calls come in, it's through a state system called EZNet. It's very managed. That would have to come through the state side. Now, I know we have text to 911 already in place. Dr. Carter, I don't know if you would like to speak to any of these. Not to put you on the spot. Our 911 director would definitely be the pro on how.
That is
Sorry.
Talk about your system.
To Eric's point, yes, we are next-gen 911 capable. So we do have text and 911 capabilities. What you're referring to is what we call live 911. We haven't explored that option yet. There are some tremendous implications to that on our first responders within the 911 center, like viewing those types of things. In my history, I have seen that go both directions, both positive and negative, but that's something that we can explore later on. We're not ready for that right now, but we are text and 911 capable. I actually had a conversation with a resident last night who can't speak, and she was not aware of text and 911, so it is available.
Stick around. Okay. And this next project is, we call it the Fire Station Alerting Project, but it really is fire stations and EMS dispatch. As y'all know, we have a lot of fire stations, and the way that we currently dispatch those has been organically created over the last 20 years, and it has not been consistent. We have literally some fax machines that get paper ripped off. This is, the goal of this project really is to modernize our communications with our fire stations and EMS stations. As those EMS stations get built, they'll have the same technology. And this is about dispatch. When that 911 call comes in, it's what mobilizes the fire trucks to get them out the door and get them going. Those MCTs, mobile CAD terminals we just talked about, that will, give them the situational awareness as they're en route. This gets them out the door. We have been working on this project since pre-Helene, as I mentioned. We went through RFP processes and all that good stuff. We have completed the vast majority of the project. We are expecting to go live in March. What else I want to say? Just some final tasks to, workflow. What I'm really excited is that this really does standardize the way that our 911 center communicates out, and dispatchers don't have to learn 4 different ways. Remember which fire department needs which way to happen and things like that. So, any questions on this one?
I guess separate from 911 communications, does any of this change or improve how first responders themselves talk to each other, either on the scene or across?
Not this particular bit of technology. That's mostly going to be done via the radio.
Yeah.
And I did want to mention the connectivity upgrades. So we are putting high-speed internet to support this in every fire station, and we're doing resilient and a backup high-speed internet. So in the event of like a Helene, we'll have some Starlink routers in some of the stations, some AT&T Cradle points, of course our general ISPs, internet service providers at these stations. So each one will have 2 possible connectivities. And in the event of like a Helene where we have massive outages, we could flip those for the fire station to use or the general public to use. It will be dedicated just for this purpose in blue skies, but in other events we can count on that a little more resiliency in those centers. As we saw, a lot of fire stations had a lot of challenges.
So I know during Helene, Starlinks were literally falling out of the sky. People were landing with helicopters and giving them out. And so I know a lot of those contracts haven't been kept up. So, in the case of an emergency, do we have those Starlink contracts ready to roll? I mean, what will it look like if technology goes down, departments need to utilize Starlink?
Yes, so we do have an enterprise agreement now with Starlink, and we've used that to support some of these efforts, as well as we call them cash kits now, right? Where in the event, I know emergency management has a couple ready to go, Starlinks. We have some in IT where in the event, like this weekend, if we need to put high-speed internet someplace, we can do that with the Starlink. Now, it's not going to be full capabilities of like a county building, right? But we're working towards that too, to be honest, where kind of wouldn't even know the difference.
I want to be clear, I don't believe we're putting this in every fire station, right, Starlink?
No, it depends on the fire station, which they're going to get, but Starlink is a pretty valuable solution when it comes to resiliency. We can generate local power. We have a hard time generating local mass communications, and Starlink is a really valuable solution for that.
And the fire departments will purchase their own radio system. We're not doing that. This is the infrastructure to the buildings, and then if they need more radios, they can purchase them.
Not quite radios, but what we do by contract, we get the signal to them to the door, and then I think there's a buzzer, the tones, and they have different kinds of tones. Commissioner Ball, I know you have a lot more experience in this than I do, but the fire station tone is a certain beep signal, and then you get to know your kind of dot, dit, dot, and that means this truck's on the road, right? If the fire station wants other things to happen when that signal comes in, they can buy additional capabilities. Vance Bell always jokes they can buy something to turn off their oven and their toaster, and so they can hit the go, but we get the signal to the door, audio and visual signal. They can now hook that signal into other things, other speakers in the back, and et cetera.
You may remember that we brought a budget amendment a few months ago to you to increase the budget of this project, as some of the fire departments had expressed interest in getting additional equipment, and we used our buying power on this contract, and they reimbursed us for additional equipment for some of their facilities.
So I know that if a call comes in, I have a pager. I also have the first two apps, so I've got 2 lines of notification. That won't change per each department, right? Each department is still setting up, once that code comes in, they're dispatching their firefighters through their chosen method. That aspect won't change. It's just a more efficient dispatch from the 911 call center.
Correct. And what you're talking about with paging, that's going to be another project down the road. And the Freedom app will be going away, as Motorola and their offering has what they call a handheld app, similar to Freedom.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Eric?
Thank y'all.
We're gonna switch topics, and I'm gonna bring Allison Danes up here. She's gonna talk about some of our parks projects.
Good morning, everybody. Very happy to be here with y'all today. Give you, I've got 2 parts. I've got an update on our park projects as well as an update on our greenway projects. So wanted to start with the Enco Recreation Destination. We have phase 1 and phase 2 of this project. We have completed the majority of phase 1 in that we have 3 lighted and turfed fields, as well as a new restroom facility up there, new paving out at the Buncombe County Sports Park. The second phase includes the turf and lighting of fields 3, 4, and 5. We broke ground on that about a month and a half ago. And we have an anticipated opening of these fields late spring, early summer of this year. Also part of that phase 2 project, we have a new playground that'll be coming into existence. We received an ADA grant from the state in order to assist with the building of that. And so we're very excited that we'll have a fully accessible playground, as well as a renovated shelter and a new contact station out there and first aid location, so that the area in the main part where fields 3, 4, and 5 are really becomes the main hub for that piece of property and where we are. Next, we have Deaverview Mountain. We did secure the Outdoor Recreation Legacy Partnership Grant, which is about $4.5 million. It is going to be used as the match in collaboration with Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy. They received $4.5 million grant through Land and Water Funds. They are currently in the process of getting final approvals for their grant. Once those approvals have come through, then we'll be able to move to acquisition. We're anticipating that acquisition of Deaverview Mountain will happen in early spring of this year. And as a reminder, funds were designated from the bonds for the development of that. So as soon as we finalize acquisition, we'll move straight into master planning and design and engineering of that project. So we will be ready to go with an RFQ to begin development of that project as soon as it comes to fruition. Next, we have Orchard Street Park. We have a signed agreement with Asheville Greenworks. I've been in communication with them, and they are planning on a community input session as to what they would like to see out there at Orchard Park. Right now, they're planning on container gardens. That piece of property is part of HMGP property from years past. And so there's limited ability to develop certain portions of that property. And so they'll be working in collaboration with the county to ensure that they're meeting all of those requirements and that property gets opened to the public. They're anticipating that it's going to take about a year and a half because they are planning again on engaging the community and then raising funds and doing limited development that's approved for that type of a property. Are there any questions about those projects before I go into greenways? Because I'm sure there'll be questions there.
Can you remind us where Orchard Street Park is? I'm drawing a complete
It's
blank
off of
this morning.
Smoky Park Highway.
Thank you.
Close to the Miami. It's kind
The
of back
Miami,
in the
thank you.
behind
Yeah.
mountain.
I just had a complete moment of could not remember.
Yep.
Did you say for the Inca Recreation, for the playground, is that also going to be ready by the summer?
No, the playground is probably going to take about a year or so. We're having conversations with some exciting designers. Earthscapes is a destination playground group that make incredible playgrounds. So we're in negotiations with them. If anyone has had the pleasure of being able to attend the park in Cary, North Carolina, there are these two large wooden birds. And so we're looking at a similar type of destination project for that playground. So it's going to take a little longer than anticipated, but the TDA and we are very excited about it.
Wonderful. And then on the Orchard Park, I know the community's very excited about that as well. That's kind of been a long time coming with that project. And if I think when I was looking over our CIP, there was some funding put to Orchard Park at one time to help with the ongoing maintenance and everything. Am I correct? I see something on here about Orchard Park, and there was funding on it at the time.
It wasn't to maintain, it was really because it's a FEMA buyout property.
Yeah.
HMGP had to be maintained for flood storage. But now that we're pivoted and activating that part, we're working with an agreement with Greenworks for that.
Okay, so there is the funding to help with Orchard Park.
Yes and no. So yes, it was put there before when we were going to activate it ourselves. But that's one of those parks that then we can hand it off to Greenworks. There'd be a portion that could go to them, but then we would release the rest of it for other park projects.
All right. And then will they be doing the ongoing maintenance, or will we be doing the ongoing maintenance? What's the plan?
They'll be responsible for the ongoing maintenance of that property. So we'll work in collaboration with them to ensure that that property is being maintained. Yep. Any other questions about park projects? All right, we'll move straight into greenways. So I'm going to start with the Inca Heritage Trail. So this property, this project has been ongoing for a while, as many of you know. We have been having discussions with the property owner. Just as a little bit of background, in August of 2024, our designers were at 25% design. And we were ready to submit to the North Carolina Department of Transportation, which is the process that you need to follow when building greenways utilizing those funds. And at that point, we went to the owner of the property, and the owner would not agree to even a theoretical alignment at that point. And so it prevented us from being able to move forward with our design. And so we continued negotiations. And very recently, as in within a month, the owner has recently expressed their interest in receiving compensation for the potential alignment in the form of a potential sale of the parcels that would make up the Inca Heritage Trail. And so this is the first that we had heard of this in dealing with this situation. And so what we have done, and we've currently been in review of what the request is in assessing what that would look like. And then the intention is that we would come back to you all with any potential or recommendations. And so that's currently where we sit with the Inca Heritage Trail. I'll give a moment if you've got any questions about that before I move on to the Woodfin Greenway.
I do have some questions.
Yep.
Because this project's been going on a long time, and so I'll probably need your help to kind of figure out some of this, but I know I hear from the community regularly about this, right? Because they had been anticipating this, and there had been support from this commission, right? And obviously staff have been working on this a long time. And to my understanding, there were agreements actually with these owners. There were agreements signed by the owners as well as the commission. There was a Greenway easement grant agreement that was signed back in 2000. I think it was 19, and then there was a modification to that also signed later, I think maybe 2020. And looking at that, they made clear of the intent to do this. Right? And so, and it seems throughout this time, and this started long before I was on the commission, but it seems like there's a history of where they have said, we are going to do this, right? We have these agreements here, and then they say, when this happens, we're gonna do it. And then whatever this is, it's usually around them getting funding for something. And then staff goes to them, and then they put it off and say, no, if we get this, and usually around some other funding, we're gonna do it. And you know, whether that's funding from the TDA or what have you. So there's a pattern here, it seems to me, that they keep stringing us along. And yet they've signed these agreements, you know, they've told the community this is what's gonna be done. And yet now, from what I'm hearing from you yet again, they are saying something differently than what has been said in the past. And so the community is extremely frustrated. I'm frustrated from this standpoint.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you speak for all of us. We've been frustrated as well. We've been committed to the project. We've been at the negotiating table every time that there's been a request. We have done the best that we could to be able to follow through with that, to have conversation about how to move this project forward. And so the agreements that you speak of, unfortunately, are not legally binding documents that require them to take action in a legal attempt of a way. And so, you know, we continue to want to be able to work through this, but I think we are coming to a point where decisions will need to be made as to how we want to potentially proceed, or what potential opportunities may be where we could look at a possible new alignment. It's a very difficult situation right now. And the properties that they're speaking of, just so that you know, are quite irregular in shape. They are on brownfields and in a floodway as well. And so there's a lot of considerations in moving forward with that type of a project, and how we decide we want to move forward.
Okay, so these agreements that were signed, so why do they not have any legal ability? Like, what was the purpose of these if there's nothing that we can actually do about the fact that they signed off?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and I'm glad that you asked it, because this is something that we do when you're working with the NCDOT on any type of a project. Usually, as you're working on alignments, you want to ensure that the properties that you're going to be affecting, where you may need right-of-way or easements, it is very typical to reach out to those property owners ahead of time and to let them know, to see and gauge their willingness and participation. And so typically what we do is, once we do that, oftentimes, particularly when there's like one large player as there is in this, what we'll do is we'll establish an agreement. And sort of what it is it's a good faith document saying, yes, we've had these conversations, understand the implications of them, and currently we're on board with what that is. And so you do that to try to preempt and avoid the situation that we're currently in. And so while it doesn't legally bind those pieces of property to the county, it's sort of a good faith measurement that is very typical and done to try to gain that support ahead of time so we don't run into these situations.
Okay, so it's a good faith agreement, which they agreed to, right?
Yes.
And these parties were interested in the Greenway, right? Like, it was part of what it wasn't just us going to them and saying, we want to do this. They were part of saying that they wanted this to be done.
Correct, and I believe it's a part of their master plan for that property.
Okay, and so it's a good faith agreement, and basically what you're saying is they're not willing to uphold their end of this good faith agreement
Without compensation.
without this yet again,
Correct.
right, wanting something else.
And the request for compensation seems to have come from nowhere.
It's the first time that I've been made aware that they're interested in us purchasing those pieces of property rather than working through an easement.
Okay.
I think I can help with this because I became a commissioner in 16 and met with them within 6 months or so with another commissioner after it started. We were talking about the bridge to nowhere back then. But in talking about this greenway, I agree with Commissioner Wells. In talking to them, they're positive at 1 minute, but the next time they always come up with a roadblock. And now I didn't know about trying to sell us brownfield and all that other stuff. I mean, you know, at some point in time, we're gonna have to either pull the switch or, you know, go in a different route. Because it's not fair to us as a community to keep stringing us along like this.
Do we have any estimation of how much the project has been delayed because of having to renegotiate this so many times?
Well, we couldn't get to 25% design in '24. And so we've been waiting over a year and a half in terms of being able even to move out of 25%. So it's been at least a year and a half.
But we've been talking about this for almost 10 years. Look, I'm in my 10th year on the board, but this has been going on, and I think they started even before I came on.
Do we know if the price they're requesting is a fair market value for a brownfield in the floodway?
That's one of the things I think we need to assess, that we'll work on assessing. And I think what we can do is we can do those assessments internally and then report back to you all.
And as we think through, you know, we major transportation projects go through different routes to get to, I mean, I-26 is a transportation project and it's coming through our community and it's taking up property to get the project done. If we were to utilize eminent domain, what would that process look like? Would we be able to pay a fair market value to get the project moving?
I'm gonna look at the attorney,
I've
because
been looking
typically
that way
you would take.
for a while. Yeah, I know, I just got everybody says, I need to research first thing to see whether eminent domain is available to be used for, I'm assuming for parks and rec purposes. I don't know if that's one of the allowable things. If eminent domain is, assuming that we do have that, then you would be obligated, I mean, you would make an offer as to what you believe the fair market value for that property was. If they disagree, then they can challenge that valuation in court. And then you're kind of left up to what the judge, or if it goes to a jury trial, what they would deem is fair market value. So you need to be careful about that, because once you pull the eminent domain switch, you own the property and you're going to pay ultimately whatever the jury decides that you're going to pay. So you kind of lose some control in terms of what you're going to pay for that, as opposed to trying to negotiate a sale.
Right, but at the end of the day, you're paying for that fair market value.
Yeah,
So
you're going
I
to
can
end up paying
negotiate
fair
now.
market. Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you, Kurt.
Well, what I would just ask then is for staff to do the research around this and come back to us and kind of give us all, because we've all come on the commission at different times too, and this has been such a long-going, convoluted mess with this. That'd be nice for us just to kind of, so we can all be in the same place, to have an understanding of what's happened, what our options are. Because the community really, I mean, they have been told publicly for a long time, right, that this was happening. And then, to your point, now yet another roadblock with it. And so I understand their frustration, because they really saw it as being able to connect the schools, the businesses, everything, you know, in that area, as a true community asset into our recreational facilities. And I'd like to have some clarity.
And we're working through that. That's why Allison mentioned the assessment and the review. We would love to bring you some options once we finish that review, but we really want to make sure, to your point, that all the backstories there, all the obstacles that you mentioned, we've worked through everything and we've done everything on our part that we believe we can do, and then we'll come to you guys with some options of how we move forward. But that's a couple weeks out still as we're working through that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Great. All right, so on to the Woodfin Greenway. So there's a couple of things I just want to remind you about the Woodfin Greenway. So we were already at 25. We were past 25% design on Highway 251, and we had gotten to 25% design on Beaver Dam Creek. I do want to remind you that in 2023, this was one project. This was one large project, and it was split out. The NCDOT let us know that we needed to make it into two projects because there were two primes on this. There was a prime for the Beaver Dam Creek section, and there was a prime for the Highway 251 section. And so we did experience some delays while that occurred. And it was at that time in 2024 that we did a reevaluation of funds. And we came to you all at that point because we had a gap in funding, and so bond funds were awarded at that time. So fast forward, we have a storm. So we're moving forward with both of these projects for Highway 251 section as well as the Beaver Dam Creek section. The NCDOT halted all progress on these projects after the storm, and we began evaluation once we were released to do so mid-year of 2025. As such, for the Highway 251 section, the reassessment, there's a reassessment of the 25% design, and basically what that is just a relook at this was what was accepted, is it still feasible? And so as part of that reassessment, one of the things that was found was that there was extensive stream bank loss and instability in the southernmost portion of this area. There was also a loss of the planned alignment, and then we were having some issues with feasibility through MSD. So as such, the recommendation from the North Carolina Department of Transportation was that we split the Highway 251 section into two sections in order to be able to move the project forward. And so with the recommendation from the NCDOT, we submitted a request to change the terminus for the Woodfin Greenway. We had discussions with the town of Woodfin as well as the MPO and the North Carolina Department of Transportation. The MPO moved that forward and did approve that in the STIP. And so that request is currently with the NCDOT, and it'll be on their February agenda for a new terminus. And basically that terminus would break out the last 0.4 of a mile through MSD into its own project. And so it doesn't get rid of that. What it does is it creates a new project outside of the current project, but allows us to move forward with the Highway 251 section from Broadway to the mill. And so we're currently working through that segment and are on schedule to be able to move that project forward. For the Beaver Dam Creek segment, the reassessment identified the need for additional engineering as well as some hydraulics and a new pedestrian footbridge that had not originally been intended. So that was submitted to us. We submitted the assessment into the NCDOT, which did get approved. There was a new cost estimate from that was approved through that process. And so both of these projects are currently moving forward. I will let you know that in the event that the Highway 251 section does not get approved for the split, even though we're highly anticipating it, it was the NCDOT that recommended that, we would show a deficit for that project overall. However, once the terminus change is approved, we actually are then to the good. And so right now, it just depends on that acceptance of the termini. In speaking with the NCDOT, typically you do evaluation and submit new cost estimates every 2 years or so. We're at 2.5 years because of the storm. And so the NCDOT recommended that we not submit for new estimates until we're at 60% design. And we anticipate being at 60% design by the end of this summer. And so we will have a better outlook to you all in terms of the cost for the Woodfin Greenway as a total.
And so February, we'll know whether NCDOT approved the terminus.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Great.
Gonna invite Jennifer Harrison up.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you. Jennifer Harrison, Ag and Land Resources. So I'm just giving you an update on a project that you've heard about for a really long time, but good news, it's really coming to an end. So this is the Barnardsville Stream Restoration Project and new bridge that's happening over Paint Fork Road. So to remind you, there's 3 funding sources that are part of the whole project. The first was an allocation given to us from the state legislature of ARPA money for 2.75, and that was to address the stream issues that we have at the site. Then we said, we don't think that's going to be enough money because we are actually going to need to acquire the property so that we can do long-term stream restoration so that we establish a good buffer and it has to stay. So we went and received funding from the Land and Water Fund, and that was roughly $1 million. And then we said, well, we're going to do all this work, but the bridge really needs to be replaced. And so Department of Public Safety provided $2.8 million to contribute towards the bridge. So all in, we're roughly $7 million. The project has taken many twists and turns, partially due to Helene, partially due to the disinterest in some landowners to make their property available for the project. So in the end, it has shrunk some in its scope, but we are still have a solid project to protect the bridge and make sure that part of the whole design is to make sure that we reduce flooding in the area. One of the reasons we have such flooding is because debris backs up on the bridge. So the new bridge design and the alignment of the channel will help to create better flow, and then we will have property that we are securing around it to provide for flood storage. So where we are in terms of the stream restoration is that we have we're in the contract negotiations with the contractor for the restoration. We expect that to begin this summer. And just a reminder, it's ARPA funds, so it has to be finished by December of this year. We don't anticipate any issue with that. And then the bridge is already in design process, and they've been working hand in hand with our engineers. So we've had great communication. They can't start the bridge until after the stream is done. So they're anticipating a start date at the earliest 2027, but they've let us know that it may be 2028 before they actually begin construction. And in that project, just an FYI, what they'll do is they'll keep the old bridge where it is, they'll build new, and then, so there won't be a disturbance in terms of traffic flow. So that's the project. Any questions?
Thank you for this update. This has definitely been a point that the Barnardsville community's been advocating for quite some time, as you know. And so the bridge construction, what's the delay to 28 rather than 27?
I believe, and I'm not super knowledgeable on the DOT side, but I believe it has to do with some of their permitting and their right-of-way acquisition work their right-of-way work takes at least a year. And at our last meeting, it was mentioned that they hadn't begun doing that yet, so.
Their right-of-way work takes a year.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
That's a word.
DOT is, it's its own beast, and I don't claim to understand all of their process, but they have been tremendous partners in this project, and we meet monthly as a whole team with the stream engineering side and DOT, and so it has been a really positive process, but definitely timely.
But from our perspective, like with the stream restoration work, so basically summer of this year, we'll be ready, and really, it's just up to NCDOT with the bridge. So
Yeah.
the holdup isn't anything with what we're doing at this point, or whoever's
Correct.
doing the stream restoration.
Correct. The restoration will be finished this summer, and then possibly in the fall if we have to do any live staking in the dormant time. But all of the construction will be finished, and then they'll be ready to start the bridge.
Okay.
When they're
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring up Dane Peterson. He's going to give us some updates on his solid waste.
Chair Edwards, Commissioners, good morning. Certainly a positive update. Do I run the slides, John? On a project that we feel definitely aligns with the county's strategic goals of diversion, recycling, and extending landfill life. And that's our new compost facility located at the Buncombe County landfill. We are now in operation with this. General Services, Scott Metcalf, was a huge help in us getting this project landed. We're in pilot scale operation on this right now. It's an aerated static pile type system, so there is technology in the building. You've all seen where you grind up wood chips, trimmings, that type of thing, and you windrow them. And that's how you stabilize that compost. You have to turn those. It takes a lot of acres to do that, where with our facility, it actually is air kits that are installed in keyways in the slab, so that once you mix your compost in that red bucket back there, it dumps out, you put it on the pad, and it injects air up into the compost while it's sitting there, so it actually stabilizes the compost. It requires a lot less space, and so that's a key component with that. So we monitor the temperatures. We have to have minimum 14 days on the slab. We check those temperatures. 3 consecutive days have to be 130 degrees, and then at least 113 for the remaining 11 days. So really cool project. Glad it's there, and we'll be continuing to receive material from our 8 drop-off sites throughout the county. We're in the partnership with the city of Asheville. We have several in the county, several in the city, and those are churning volumes. We're getting around 31 tons a month of food waste. I think 62,000 pounds of food waste coming through those drop-offs from residents. And that's the material we'll be using in this compost facility to get our batches right, do some homework, and figure out what's making the most sense with our carbon and nitrogen mixture there. Another project we have going on currently is landfill phase 8 construction and demolition landfill cell expansion. This is our last facility master plan horizontal expansion on the C&D landfill side. We'll talk a little bit more about that too in the future outlook, but 2 separate landfills we operate at our solid waste management facility at Panther Branch. One's a MSW, municipal solid waste. The other is a construction and demolition landfill. That is the expansion we're doing right now. Buchanan and Sons was the low responsive bidder on the project. And as you can see from the picture, I mean, we're pretty far in the project, right? We're doing mass grading, and things are going really well so far. We did hit a pocket of rock last week, and we also hit one in a slope this week. So we got some survey work to do, some decisions to make on that rock. We build those in our budget, so we all know where we're working here, right? We anticipate rock, but other than that, so far the project's going really well. I would say substantial completion probably mid-April of this year, and that space will be getting close to being ready to be used. Those are the 2 primary updates. Any questions on the compost or the C&D expansion, commissioners?
I got a question.
I'm sorry.
I remember there was a new-ish DEQ homing-related grant program. I think I emailed you and Sybil about it, and I know you wrote me back, but I think the purpose of it was for composting facilities and maybe other eligible expenses.
Yes, sir.
Is there something else that we're chasing for that bucket of money that's related to this?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Commissioner. So Yes, DEQ has got, and it's a $0 match, right? So we're aggressively seeking funding through that program. C&D waste, what we're talking about now, it's fitting, right? That is the target of a lot of our efforts from our team, as well as strategy and innovation right now, looking at our C&D, construction demolition material stream that we're accepting in the landfill. We know that certainly has an impact to landfill life, and we know through our recent waste audits that we have substantial recycled materials in the C&D stream that we can divert, we can send to market, but that takes effort, right? It takes the money side of that and investment. So that is really a focus with the DEQ grant that you're speaking of, and we're going after some funding to help to separate, sort C&D type material. And when you think about clean wood, cardboard, metals, concrete, things we talk about a lot, ways that we can actually get those out of the active waste stream. But it's also critical with the work we're doing with strategy innovations on the policy side. Because, we have things in place like the mixed load ordinance. If if a hauler comes in, we can definitely hit with the stick. But we want alignment with these programs with our developers, contractors, haulers, because this impacts everybody when we start, implementing these type fee structures or these type policies and procedures. So it's two-part. It's the sorting separation, the physically getting our hands, if you will, on the material, pulling what we can, separating and getting those to markets. But it's also the source separation piece at the job site. When you think about how do I get my scrap clean wood in a separate dumpster, not mixing those, going straight to market with my cardboard. Those are the type of things that we're really going to get deep in the weeds with as far as the policy side. So I hope that answers your question. We are aggressively going after the grant.
Would that money, that bucket of money, is it eligible for something programmatic, or is it just physical infrastructure, or both?
That's our understanding, because most of the money that we're requesting is for nuts and bolts, operational things, right? Because on the policy side, that's a little bit separate from what we're requesting money on. We're talking about facility updates, maybe some existing space that we have that we can repurpose. That's really what we're targeting with requesting those monies in the next. It's a 3-year phase grant process that we're filing. So that is certainly the plan. Is we hope and we really want to receive those fundings.
But if awarded, you think there's a strategy there to lengthen the life of the landfill with that money?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Dane, thanks for your work on this. I know that C&D typically is one of the largest drivers of filling up landfill. Sure. And no offense to you, but the transfer station is one of the saddest places I go in the county at times, just to see all this stuff that's going into the landfill. So updates to require better sorting, ensuring that things that can be recycled, things that could be profitable, are not going into the landfill. Do those updates need to happen at this facility, or does that a transfer station update? How can we look to other counties across the country to say what's working well to reduce that flow of C&D debris?
Yeah, great question, Commissioner. So with working, Max and Heather on strategy innovation, that's something you mentioned too. We're benchmarking other successful counties that have done this. One that pops to mind, totally separate funding structure, right? They are on tax bill, but Orange County has got a very aggressive recycle program. We at a recent conference, we learned about 2 other programs, one in Pittsburgh and one in Austin, Texas, that have recently implemented C&D type programs to do exactly what you're talking about, saving landfill space. But I think another part of that question is it's both. It's transfer station and landfill. Part of the grant is trying to get funding to help with sorting at both locations. Totally different operations, right? But at the landfill, it'll look more like, specialized equipment that we can actually pull from the stream coming into the landfill safely, right? Dirt pad, clean those dumpsters, and be able to sort those. Transfer station is going to look a little different with more of a transfer station type process. Mm-hmm. So those are the things we're focused on. And again, it really starts with ordinance, policy, getting buy-in from all of our partners, and then education on what folks can expect and how they can help us participate in this.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Dan. Question I have.
Sir.
When we finish the landfill phase 8, at this point, what will be the estimated life expectancy of the landfill?
Yeah. important question, right, Commissioner? So when we think about the last horizontal expansion on the C&D landfill side, this one we're working on now, that's about a 5-year window. Overall, on MSW side, municipal solid waste, that landfill, the lime geosynthetic lime landfill, we have about 20, 21 years remaining. But that's what we're all looking at. We're staring down the barrel of when C&D closes. Perfectly legal, most counties do that. Most counties don't have a separate landfill for C&D. It's mixed into MSW. But it does substantially impact the life of your MSW landfill. So it's important that we're looking ahead of that to make sure that we can divert, recycle, get as much of that material out into those markets and not in our MSW landfill long term.
As we move into our 7-year CIP section, Dan will be back to talk about this.
Rinse,
future
repeat.
projects.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Dane.
All right, so that wraps up our section on current capital project updates. To summarize, as you've heard, we have a robust amount of capital projects underway with over 60 ongoing capital projects that total nearly $200 million budget across the county. In terms of budget, about $180 million of that is funded by the general fund, with $121 million of that funded by debt financing. We have yet to issue debt on about $68 million of those debt-funded projects, which means the general fund has not yet seen debt service impacts from those projects. So that's important to keep in mind as we move to the capital financing section later this morning. And as we heard from Dane, we also have about $18 million in solid waste capital projects as well, which is funded through the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. So I know we paused for questions throughout, but I think we'll just pause again. Are there any questions that you have on the current capital projects?
Did you say on the current capital projects?
Yeah.
Good.
Sounds good. I would also do a quick time check. I think we're halfway. Okay, keep going. All right. All right, so let's go to the next section. So now that we've talked through current ongoing capital projects, we're going to focus towards the future now and look towards the planned capital projects on our draft 7-year CIP, which you should be able to find a copy of in your packet. As John mentioned, we're still going through the capital project evaluation process that I kind of talked about a little earlier. So should note that all the projects and costs that we're covering in this section and that are on your draft 7-year plan are simply what's planned for at this time, may be subject to change as we continue to move through the evaluation process in the coming months. So similar to the framework we used for current capital projects, we're going to use the same, to guide our discussion, we've categorized our 7-year CIP projects into the same buckets. On the CIP presently, there are over 80 projects that total around $390 million over the 7-year period. So by category, this includes public safety projects, which totals over $150 million. That includes construction of 3 new EMS bases and maintenance and renovations for the detention center and courthouse, as well as a new EOC/storage facility, among other projects. Outside public safety related projects, we also have planned for new facilities that totals around $54 million, includes a parks office and indoor recreation facility at the Buncombe County Sports Park. And Ronnie had talked a little bit about how we're in design on that one. Major maintenance projects, which totals around $110 million. That includes, again, the maintenance for county facilities stemming from the comprehensive facility assessment, as well as other maintenance, such as paving, roofing, and HVAC placements. New infrastructure, which totals around $16 million and includes transportation infrastructure at the County Ferry Road property. Parks projects, which total around $20 million, and that includes ball field renovations at North Buncombe and Hominy Valley. And as I also mentioned, we're also expecting to see additional capital projects come out of that ongoing recreation, greenways, and open space master plan when that's completed.
Oh, that's what I forgot to ask Allison. When do we expect to have that completed?
She's coming back.
Oh, okay. And she'll talk about when that's expected to be completed? Okay. Oh, okay, thank you.
And we'll also bring Dane back for solid waste projects, which total around 32 million, and again, funded through that solid waste enterprise fund. And he kind of talked about it, but includes cell 8 expansion of the county municipal solid waste landfill. So I'm going to invite Ronnie back up. What's that? To talk through some of the key projects for the first couple categories.
All right, thanks, Jay. So moving into our first bucket, the public safety bucket, we talked earlier about the EMS assessment and the implementation of those bases and getting those online. We talked a little bit about east and west, so obvious next locations are north and south. We would be looking to fund the construction of the west base and the design of a north and south base in the next 7 years. Moving to the EOC storage facility, I mentioned earlier that we would kind of revisit that storage facility talk. What this would allow us to do is look at existing facilities that are already constructed that may be a better value to purchase and make a storage facility, and also implement an emergency operations center there as well. And so that just kind of keeps our options open for which one makes the most sense, both programmatically and fiscally for the county. Did want to note on this one that we would not do both. In other words, if this were the path we took to find an existing facility, we would not construct a new one at the expired landfill at the general services properties. And then sheriff's evidence storage. So as the sheriff's office evidence storage area is getting to capacity, there will need to be an expansion of that area soon. This could either be in the form of an addition to their current location or a new facility. Could also be incorporating it in with some of the storage facility talks that we're having. Those things are still being assessed. And then detention center facility assessment projects. We talked a lot about projects already underway. And like I mentioned, that building is in constant need of repair or upgrade of some form just because of the usage. So one thing that would come up in the next foreseeable future would be a replacement of the refrigeration units for the walk-in freezer and cooler there. You can imagine the amount of food that comes through the kitchen. We have to keep that cool and or frozen. So we want to make sure we don't suffer any losses there. Another item on the detention center facility assessment was replacement of the building automation system there as it becomes antiquated. That basically controls the HVAC system for the facility. We are state mandated for the comfort levels in the detention center, so making sure that those items run efficiently and effectively is a priority for our team. And then courtroom renovations. Also, like we discussed earlier, we're getting close to a 100-year-old facility in the historic courthouse. We've talked a lot about infrastructure and those sort of things to support the building for the next 50 plus years. We need to do the same on some of the courtrooms there. This would cover 3 courtroom renovations in the old building, and it would not only help bring up the layouts to more modern standards, but give better finishes and technology in the spaces as well.
When was the detention center built?
So it was built in 2 phases. The north tower, what we call the north tower, the first section was built in 96, and then the jail addition, or what we all call the new jail, was built in 2008. Not new anymore, but still the new jail with us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between the sheriff's storage and then that other bullet that said storage?
One just specifically evidence storage for the sheriff's office, and the other storage would be just all other county department storage. So not as secure of a location, but a need for storage. So moving to new facilities. Earlier we talked about the parks office out at the Buncombe County Sports Park. After Helene, and I think we've even mentioned a few more times about resiliency shelters here today, it came up that this could be a good location to serve both of those purposes, both the parks office and indoor recreation facility that could be designed and purposefully constructed to serve as a shelter in the event of an emergency. So should this project make it through the reviews and get funded, we would move forward with that one.
And so with that, you're saying put the new parks office that you were talking about earlier, that was gonna be at the Inca Recreation Destination, putting it in the indoor recreation facility, wherever that is.
Still at the Buncombe County Sports Park, what we're looking at, just instead of in the lower section where the grounds maintenance buildings were, it would be up top somewhere just for better access and get us up out of the floodways that are down there in the lower area.
Okay.
And then a new ag and land facility. Agriculture Services is currently in the building at 49 Mount Carmel. That building is on land owned by the Buncombe County Board of Education. This is a project that came up through the facility assessment where we were just trying to vacate leased spaces and the county actually owned our facilities, making them easier to maintain and improve. And so it's on the 7-year CIP to get those folks a facility. Also, as they expand, they have a need for things like covered storage for some of their farm equipment and things like that that we could incorporate with that building as well.
I certainly have heard for years of the need of that, and it'll be interesting to kind of think about like the location for that and thinking about where are most of the people who are coming from to rent that equipment and use that equipment and use the services, and thinking about that location in the county.
Yeah, I'm sure that comes to fruition. Jennifer and someone from our team will work very closely together to make sure it's in the right location. And then new Swannanoa Library and Government Complex. So I guess it's been a few years ago now, you guys voted to keep Swannanoa Library in its current location while the county looked for property somewhere else to construct a new Swannanoa Library. And so that's what this project would do, allow us to start looking for property to do that. I see Ms. Pender looking at me so that I mentioned the government complex as well, and Buncombe East, I think is what she calls it a lot, to get government services more out into that Swannanoa East Asheville community.
And can you speak more to that with the government complex and how you see that work? Because I think that's a very interesting concept that there's a need for, because I definitely hear from folks out, well, we clearly know that the library means so much to the community, and so there's a lot of excitement around, I'm sure there will be a lot of excitement around the new library. But speaking to the government complex too, for the services that you think that you're envisioning being there so that community members don't have to drive into the city.
I think at this time we don't necessarily have an exact idea of what services would be in that location. I kind of feel like it would look something similar to what we see at Lester Crossing in that area, where there's a few county offices in one location.
Specifically Health and Human Services. Like Health and Human Services would be an idea if you want to get registered to vote. So bringing county services, to Ronnie's point, but we have not yet laid out every single service that we would bring.
But Health and Human Services
would be top of mind, yes, ma'am.
Did we talk that it might be a landing spot too for sheriff's deputies?
And we would want to talk to the sheriff's office, a landing spot, but we would want to, if this is approved, we will really do what we will call the master plan and make sure all the services that we believe should be there would be represented, so.
I think that's exciting. Looking forward to hearing more.
Yes, very, very exciting to be moving forward. Do we have any kind of timeline on that? Because I know I'm going to get that question. So I'm just asking so that I'll have an answer for
So I
folks.
just want to reiterate that the plan is in draft, and we'll bring you a more concrete plan.
Specifically, I love that John is going to give me the reality check. I love that. He's the money side of things. But for us, we do have to acquire the land first, so that would be the first step. So negotiation on any land before we can give you a timeline on what that would look like.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and moving to major maintenance items coming up on the 7-year CIP. So comprehensive facility assessment tasks, we see those again along with the other maintenance items like countywide paving, roof replacements, those sort of things that are really a revolving door of projects. It's due to the amount of buildings and square footage that the county possesses. You'll always see those items on there. And we would cover items through various county buildings like MEP, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, infrastructure items, elevators, things of that nature. And then our library facility assessment tasks, again, just following the order of libraries. And the next on the list, like Commissioner Wells mentioned earlier, is South Buncombe or Skyland Library, depending on how long you've been here, that's what you call it. And so that one would be a very similar renovation to the West Asheville Library, where we would tackle some interior finishes, some electrical upgrades there, new circulation desk, that sort of thing. And then new infrastructure, similarly to what we spoke about earlier, EV charging. We mentioned the project over at the parking deck here at 164 College. So we would look to do the same thing at the Sears Alley parking deck over next to Health and Human Services. And then the Ferry Road transportation infrastructure, so a continuation of development on that project. It would allow finalizing the design there, as well as purchasing necessary right-of-ways. And we did want to mention that the team is pursuing the CDBG grants on that for funding as well. And then our shelter resiliency generators, just a continuation of what we talked about earlier, where we currently have the 4 schools designed and funding for installation at Inca. That would provide funding for the remaining 3 schools to get those generators in and create areas for shelters should they be needed.
Is this the Sears Alley parking deck?
That is the Sears Alley parking deck. Yeah.
I just live here, doesn't mean I know what all the roads are called, so.
We call it the Cox Avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. That's standing on Cox Avenue looking at the deck, so that makes sense. I think that is all I have, so I'll pause a moment to see if there are any more questions.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the EV charging infrastructure in that deck? I thought there was already some infrastructure. Is this an expansion, a modernization?
That's a great question. So there are some EV chargers in both decks now. Some were put in with the construction of the building and some were added later from the Volkswagen grant monies that came in that provided public charging stations. The ones we have now are publicly available. The ones we're installing will be for Buncombe County fleet vehicles. Since we have so many fleet vehicles here at our forward-facing department now, it makes sense to have them right there. Permits, inspections, those folks can use them to charge up overnight.
That's great. Thanks, Ronnie.
And do we have a timeline on the shelter resiliency generators?
I do not. That one is Robert Brown's projects, but we can get that for you for sure.
And as Ryan said before, we are already funded for the first of the 4 locations, and we've done the design for the whole project. The shelter resiliency is mapped out in future years on the 7-year CIP handout.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Maybe I should ask this earlier. We talked about earlier parking decks. Do we have a process to ensure we have full utilization of the parking garages that we currently have? Are there any that we aren't necessarily utilizing that could be transferred over or sold? We need the Broadway, or it's not Broadway, but
We just
we
have
built
the,
more.
There's just the 3, the
Just the
356 Fillmore that we talked about earlier, the 164 College Street outside here, and then Sears Alley, which is there at the Cox building.
So just 3, okay.
yes.
And then one other question, backing up on the libraries, because I see that about South Buncombe, and obviously about the Swananoa Library, and just a question on the Weaverville Library and Land Design. I think that was under FY29. So we're not looking at moving the library outside of the municipality there, are we?
This is going to that facility study to all the repairs and maintenance.
Okay.
If you have another location in Weaverville that we could build a new library, that'd be perfect, because that library does have a lot of maintenance that we need to do on that building, so, but no, we're not looking at leaving Weaverville.
Okay, but if we were able to have land within it, you see it would be beneficial. Is it just that building, it's old, and so all the maintenance is very costly?
Correct, yeah, and
Okay.
its
And
location
water.
is difficult as
Yes.
well. You know, the
There's no
only
parking.
parking is public parking on the street that's typically full, and that's what.
Okay, and does the town of Weaverville actually own that space, or do they own the space? Okay, thank you.
I'll just ask my library question too, as well. So we talked previously about upgrading the West Asheville Library, I believe. Which Asheville owns the whole building, or?
We
You
own
own
that
half of it?
building.
Okay.
We own the building all the way up to the police department. It's separated by a little breezeway. That's kind of where the property line is.
Oh, the property line is like the wall inside of the building.
It's an open breezeway area.
Okay, okay. I guess what should I read into that, our intent to improve that facility as opposed to construct a new one? Is that, we made a decision on not building a new library in that area, or is it just kind of on hold until we can find land similar to Weaverville?
It is not on hold. We're actually going through the library assessment that we did several years ago. I want to say 21 or so. And it did call for some renovations and maintenance, so that's what we're doing on our buildings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is a small scale renovation.
Yeah.
It's not huge grandiose type of thing.
Yeah. It's not a major overhaul. It is truly some a touch up, some amenities, some changes to the front desk, some counters, part paving, part painting and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, I think that's great. I just asked because I know the public asked me and others lots of questions about the proposed West Asheville Library, and when we were talking about that, whenever that was, a year or two ago.
Right, if you recall, that was at the Asheville Primary
Yeah.
School site,
Yeah.
and that did not move forward, so we're actually gonna update what we currently have.
Okay, just want to be able to communicate what our intent is and I'm sure that evolves like everything else. But, okay.
And just to ask the question, I know that Asheville is looking at a different utilization of that for their police department. They're going to have a new APD base a little further south, but they still plan to utilize that building. They're not completely pulling APD out of that. They're just slightly altering the use. And we're working with them to ensure that they're looking at long-term use of that so that we're in partnership since we're using the other side of the building.
We have not talked to Asheville about their use of their side. It is not, but we can reach out and ask that question, but I know they're gonna maintain a site there.
I thought they were making it AFD only, and that was the rumor I heard.
Yeah, we should just make sure we're coordinating and make sure that we're in line with what they're using.
Thanks.
All right. Y'all are completely done with me now. Thank you.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thank you, Ronnie.
And commissioners, we did schedule this until 12 with a couple more topics to go, so we'll try to speed up a little bit.
Hello, good to see y'all again. I'm excited to report on the 7-year CIP for parks. Wanted to let you know that Inca Recreation Destination, we are looking into a phase 3 of that project, which would include the potential relook and assessment of fields 6 and 7 as potential sports court opportunities. It may also be an opportunity to bring the recreation office into the folds of the Inca Recreation Destination in terms of a whole complete project. And so we're excited about the possibility of moving forward with that. And have had initial conversations with the TDA and are feeling pretty good about moving forward. Also looking at boat launch replacements. One of the things that we really found during Helene was the importance of access into the French Broad River. And so this has been identified as opportunity for us to really enhance the resiliency of our riverfront parks as well as support EMS during times where they need access, as well as supporting our economy, outfitters being able to better access the French Broad River. So we're looking at Glen Bridge River Park, as well as Hominy River Park and Bent Creek River Park. So those are forthcoming. Continuing at Lake Julian, we have started investing in Lake Julian improvements, and there are 3 facilities there for restrooms. We have renovated 2 of those 3, and so we'll be looking to renovate the final, as well as improve access into the lake with a new access into there for a boat launch. And improved docks. Just so that you know, we've also, as part of our Helene recovery, have really been looking into stormwater issues, improvements out there as well. Then we have the 2 ball fields. We have North Buncombe ball fields as well as Hominy Valley ball fields. So that you are aware, there are 2 ball fields Out at North Buncombe, there's a baseball field and a softball field. And then in Hominy Valley, there's actually 5 fields. One of those is a softball field. The other 4 are baseball fields. So we're looking to renovate those. Those fields have not been renovated in at least 20 years. So we will look to do laser grading and enhance those parks as a whole to make them more inviting and able to accommodate the needs of the community as well as potential tournaments in the future. And then last but not least, the master planning placeholder. So we are in the process of finalizing our master plan. I do want to remind everyone that this is 3 plans in one as well. And so, because I've had people ask about why this has taken so long, not only have we had Helene, that has been a huge disruption, but again, we're looking at the system-wide master plan, as well as an open space plan and the greenways and trails plan. And so we've been working on these 3 plans, and the assessment of what has been lost and cost estimating has taken a little bit longer because there's been so much damage throughout the county, and we really are excited that the timing of this allows for us really to address some of those resiliency and really get a good mark for where the county is now. And so once that plan is completed, there will be recommendations for priority projects, and there'll be a placeholder within the budget to be able to actually bring those projects to fruition.
And you said, when did you say you're expecting it?
The first, we'll have a draft that will be made available to the public in May of this year, and then by the end of the summer, we will bring it to you all for adoption.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Thank you.
We're gonna bring Dane back.
All right, Commissioners, some of this will be a little bit redundant from our earlier conversation, but I do need to make one clarification to make sure we're all on the same page. So MSW landfill cell 8, that's the 2 landfills we were talking about earlier. The project that's going right now is our C&D phase 8. And what we're talking about now for future CIP, the request we made for FY2027 is for MSW cell 8. So that is really for the engineering work and design work to happen for cell 8. As you can see, we've used the term master plan a lot, but that's what this is a facility plan build out for all 10 of our MSW landfill cells. Active cell 7 to the northeast there, top right corner. And what we need to get done is for future cell 8, and that's the, like I said, engineering design, and there's a lot of background that goes into that as well, like hydrogeological analysis, drill holes, make sure you monitor where the groundwater level is, and that's how we dictate design for a vertical separation from the bottom liner of the landfill so that we're protecting groundwater at this location. So that's what we'll be asking for in CIP starting in FY27. It's approximately 9 acres. We think development costs is around $1.2 million per acre. So you see that phase, right? So FY27, we're asking for the money to design it, to get a permit to construct from DEQ, and then we'll look to the bidding process, and then selecting a contractor, and then getting that cell built, which typically with a line landfill is about a year. Highly sophisticated engineered systems for design, how we build them, and how we operate them. But it's all designed to protect public health and the environment. That's what it's about, and they're expensive systems. So one thing we did think about in this design that drove up the cost a little bit was resiliency for future. One of the impacts from Helene was the amount of leachate that was generated that we had to manage from all the rainfall. And we knew that that was very much a challenge. Our folks stepped up to admit that. But as we continue to add landfill space, you have to have additional capacity to store more and more leachate, right? So tank systems is something we're looking at through this process, because we feel like not only does that give us additional capacity, but it also helps us as we're looking to the future with emerging contaminants, emerging chemicals, PFAS, PFOAs. That's not emerging, that stuff is here, and regulation is being set now. So landfill operators, wastewater treatment facilities, all of us in the waste systems are going to be impacted by this. But looking down the road to align that with a tank system, something that could be in line with a reverse osmosis filtration type system, some type of treatment facility, if that's going to be required at our place. We feel like that helps us better align, but also helps us with the capacity this year. I'm sorry, I went too far.
Yeah,
There we go.
lag to it.
So we did discuss earlier the focus on construction, demolition, waste diversion. This is the overall view from the C&D landfill side. Somebody told me one time that looks like a whale from the overview. I always thought that was pretty funny. But so impacts from C&D, what we talked about with C&D landfill space, you know, we're getting close to the 5-6 year mark where that space is going to be filling up, and the impacts that has on MSW landfill. So we're looking to obviously focus on the C&D stream, see what we can do for ordinance, policies, and actual physical sorting in our systems to be able to extend the life of the landfill as much as possible. And that is the information I'll start. Can I answer any questions, commissioners?
And the tank system you mentioned, is that utilized in other localities around here?
Yeah, so New Hanover, total different situation years ago with what happened on the Cape Fear. They do have tank systems set up and a treatment process. They actually have a lagoon that they discharge into. It's effective technology, and because ultimately the water was so clean when they were discharging it that they had to put it through some more natural vegetation because it was too clean. I'm talking like I know that. I know you know all about this. So yes, to answer your question, it is used in other locations. It's really a design question of, okay, you've got all this acreage, right? We're starting to get complete on some cells where you've got vegetation cover. That does reduce some of the leachate gallons that's hitting to bottom liner. So it's really looking towards the future for what we have filled, what we're extending or expanding to, and then making sure we got capacity in our leachate pond, but also in the vertical storage too, so that we can manage that capacity and be in line with what the future may hold.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dean.
Thanks, Dan.
So we would be remiss not to discuss the relationship between the 7-year CIP and our recovery plan. As we dig into our recovery from Helene, there's certainly overlap between the capital improvement plan and the recovery plan. Some of the items on our 7-year CIP include a parks office and indoor facility, which would have capacity to serve as an emergency shelter. We are looking at a new emergency operations center, which is also a goal of our preparedness plan. Additionally, we are looking at strategically placing generators, as we've discussed before, in existing facilities that could serve as shelters. Some of the items being addressed through FEMA public assistance include rebuilding parks from storm damages, replacing lost fleet and repairing facilities, and landslide mitigation. Additionally, grant funding is being sought for stream bank stabilization, natural hazard monitoring, and resilience projects. You will receive updates about these items with your ongoing recovery plan briefings.
All right, so just gonna wrap up. I know we have keep an eye on the clock, so I'm not really gonna add much here. Just simply summarizing, there's over 80 capital projects planned on the 7-year CIP that total over $390 million. About $375 million of that is slated to be funded by our general fund, and about 341 of that is slated to be debt funded. So just keeping those in mind as we move to the capital financing section later on. And as Dane mentioned, there's also $32 million in solid waste capital projects slated on the 7-year plan. So that's our capital section. Are there any questions as we wrap up?
Thanks for letting us ask questions as we go. I think that helped get us to this point.
I see that we're starting to lose. Did you want to take a quick break, 5 minutes?
Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break since we've already lost a few, and then we will come back at 11:10. That's 6 minutes. We're in recess.
My name is Jake Clotes. I'm the fleet manager here at Buncombe County, and I'll be going over our fleet with you today. Thank you. I'm part of a 12-person team that's responsible for the acquisition, maintenance, disposal of our approximately 527 on-road fleet vehicles. In addition to the on-road vehicles at Buncombe County, we also are responsible for the management of off-road construction equipment such as backhoes and skid steers, grounds maintenance equipment such as lawnmowers, chainsaws, snowplows, salt spreaders. We also maintain a variety of trailers. We're grateful to be working out of a brand new garage, which is part of the 22,000 square foot facility general services complex that Ronnie mentioned earlier. Recently completed in December, saw a number of you at the ribbon cutting. This new facility is not only energy efficient and resilient, but it also allows for greater operational efficiency. All of the divisions of General Services Department are now located under one roof, which allows for things like bulk ordering of parts and supplies and sharing of tools and equipment. Additionally, our physical location adjacent to the Public Safety Training Center allows us to service and repair vehicles while Sheriff's Office, EMS, emergency management staff are training at that center. These vehicles make up over half of our 527 vehicles.
You said the emergency management vehicles make up over half, is that what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Public safety, yes.
Public safety.
As I said, our fleet consists of approximately 527 registered on-road vehicles that support Buncombe County operations. These vehicles include light and heavy-duty trucks, sedans, sport utility vehicles, and also several specialty vehicles, including pursuit-rated vehicles assigned to the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office, ambulances, and other emergency response vehicles. These critically important vehicles not only helped us respond to and recover from events such as Tropical Storm Helene and recent wildfires, our fleet is also used every day by our dedicated staff to provide core services that benefit our community. Since I've been here, I have developed a multi-year replacement plan for our fleet vehicles, which is summarized on this slide, the next 7 years at least. These are counts of vehicles that have met replacement thresholds by department by fiscal year. And as you can see, there are 67 existing vehicles that have been identified as eligible for replacement in FY27, although we're still collecting data and evaluating their needs. This initial evaluation was developed using industry-informed age and mileage thresholds by function and by vehicle class, with the goal of having safe, reliable transportation with the lowest total cost of ownership. The approach is summarized by the criteria shown at the bottom of the slide. Vehicle classes along with vehicle types and or function. For example, a midsize SUV that is used for emergency response has an estimated lifespan of 7 years, whereas that same vehicle, if assigned to general government, has a lifespan of 10 years.
Question
Yes.
on that. So the lifespan is typically based on the mileage as well as the class of the vehicle? Is that what you're saying here?
So each fleet vehicle is assigned a class, and that class is associated with a lifespan, a number of years.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, we look at mileage as well. We want to make sure that these vehicles are being utilized. So that's why those two components are being used. The public safety vehicles have a shorter lifespan and shorter mileage before they reach that threshold of being eligible for replacements.
Okay. And I'm just wondering, when I look at the mileage there, so are these vehicles, I know there's been some changes with our fleet, and people aren't taking them home as much as they used to. So whenever I look at mileage, I just think about that. If people are having to drive them home, then that's increasing the mileage. Have we really changed to where most of our vehicles are not being taken home? Where are we with that?
Let me get back to you on that answer.
Okay.
I do know, to Jake's point, with the different classes, like the pursuit vehicles in the sheriff's office, they would get to take those home because they have to respond. But if it's just a general service person, like social workers, no, they won't take those home. So it depends on the class of the vehicles if you take it home or not.
Okay. And then as far as thinking back to fleet services, is our turnaround time, are we improving with our turnaround time of getting vehicles back out, especially for public safety?
For purchasing, is that the question?
I'm sorry,
The
no.
biggest question when we talked about the turnaround was how long it took us to buy a vehicle. That was the issue that we had coming out of COVID and again in Helene, really how long it takes to get a vehicle. That was the biggest piece of the turnaround time. And then after you buy the vehicle to get it upfitted with the equipment that they need and the striping that they need on the cars, that is still taking a significant time.
Much less than during COVID, for sure.
Right.
We have really expedited that process. We have entered into partnerships with upfitters, for example, so that they're ready for when we receive our vehicles to start that upfitting process. So yes, much quicker turnaround than in previous years.
Right. The maintenance piece, we have that. It really was that lead time to get a vehicle from purchase to here.
Okay, thank you.
So next, we've got new vehicle additions. New additions to the fleet are requested each and every year by departments.
Jake, before you move on, we talked a lot about that 7-year CIP and how much is coming. What's important to note is that 67 vehicles is a tremendous increase to what we have ever funded before as well. So if you're looking at this, understand that that vehicle purchase is going to be a significant increase to our budget as well, going into 2027. So I do want to say thank you to Jake to bring that professional eye to what we do. 150 miles for a vehicle and the sheriff's office is significant mileage for that cost and what they have to do. So I want to prepare you that this is going to be a heavy lift as well, along with all the projects that we just got done talking about. Thanks, Jake.
So back to new vehicle additions. Every year, new additions are requested as part of the budget process to support operations. Those are currently being reviewed. New requests, they are reviewed and evaluated by a cross-departmental vehicle evaluation team, and those recommendations are then forwarded to the budget department and the county manager's office for further approval and potential inclusion in the recommended budget. So those are still being evaluated. Next, just wanted to touch on our motor pool. We've been piloting a motor pool program within DSS, HHS. This program allows their staff to reserve a county-owned pool vehicle as opposed to using their personal vehicle to carry out their assigned duties. While there are many benefits to the motor pool, the primary goal was to reduce the use of employee-owned personal vehicles and reduce the cost associated with employee-owned vehicle reimbursements. To date, there are 19 pool vehicles available to reserve by DSS staff, with the majority of them being hybrids. Speaking of hybrids, another benefit of this program is that we have the ability to reduce our carbon emissions through the utilization of hybrid vehicles as opposed to the emissions of personally owned employee vehicles that may or may not be as energy efficient as our fleet vehicles. In future years, we hope to expand the motor pool so that it's available to other departments as well. When properly managed, the motor pool program has the potential to eliminate underutilized vehicles, which can reduce budget needs, as well as provide other operational benefits, such as reduction in the space required for parking those vehicles.
On that note, just quickly, I also recognize that we're paying, I think it's 72.5 cents is the reimbursement rate per mile if folks use their private vehicles. But also with hybrids, we're saving a significant amount of money on gas. And what part of the budget would those cost savings show up in for fuel costs?
You won't see a savings, you'll see a reduction of expenses, right? So right now, the fuel all comes out of general services budget.
Okay.
So you just see a reduced amount being budgeted for fuel.
Great. Thank you.
So one of our most significant vehicle investments is ambulances. The cost of ambulances has increased steeply over the last 5 years. To replace a fully loaded ambulance with all the equipment costs approximately $664,000. We were able to generally remount the box onto a new chassis at a cost of $227,000. We expect roughly 5 years of useful life from ambulance, with another 5 years for the box with the chassis remount. Equipment in the ambulances needs to be universal, so on occasion there arises expenses for replacement, such as the structure system. Keeping the significant investment in mind and also growth of the fleet as new bases come online, we have established a long-range replacement and expansion plan to align with the CIP. As you may remember, we have exceptionally long lead times to purchase ambulances and have brought resolutions before you in the past. While these lead times are getting shorter, we are still looking at 1.5 to 3 years for delivery.
Next, I'll talk about fleet sustainability. I absolutely want to express our commitment to our sustainable fleet policy. Programs such as the motor pool and evaluation of underutilized vehicles will help to right-size our fleets. Otherwise, each time a vehicle is replaced, the goal is to replace it with a vehicle that is as fuel and energy efficient as possible. Zero-emission vehicles are ideal, but if they're not suitable for the function, then we will evaluate the feasibility of an alternative fueled vehicle, then a hybrid vehicle, then traditional gas and diesel if necessary. The goal is for vehicle purchases to be in the highest level of sustainability tier as possible in order to achieve our shared carbon reduction goals. Lastly,
Is this upcoming budget gonna be the year that we can finally purchase the sheriff's department, an electric vehicle or two? Is that on the horizon?
We need the sheriff to agree to that. We can talk to him.
Okay.
So I saw April smile, he gave that answer, and shaking his head.
Good body language. Yeah. I think John's point, I thought we purchased them in the past and they didn't like them for purchase vehicles, but we can.
At the sheriff's office?
I thought we did.
they have a number of hybrid vehicles.
Hybrids, okay.
I believe one low-speed electric vehicle.
I just know that over there, it's half the fleet, so if we're gonna
Make an
evolve
impact.
those goals, like we have to figure out a strategy there and,
We will have the
I know they have
conversation.
vehicles that travel hundreds of miles a day, but they also have command staff and all kinds of other purposes and needs for light-duty vehicles that I just don't know why.
We have regular meetings with them on fleet, so we can bring this up as part of them and see if there's some of the vehicles not used for pursuit that they'll be interested in.
Yeah.
I think that was the concern, was the charge time for pursuit.
Exactly, as well as the charging infrastructure being available.
Right, being
which
available.
Ronnie touched on earlier in the
Right.
parking garages.
Right, yeah.
And I'm getting way out of my lane, but since we adopted this policy, companies like GM and Ford have created law enforcement rated vehicles that are electric that we could, to my knowledge, we haven't purchased anywhere in this region, so.
I believe there are other sheriff's departments and law enforcement within the county that utilize more electric vehicles. They don't quite have as many miles per day that they need to get to, but there's also some resiliency measures that can be utilized when you have an EV. They can be as a standalone power hub if you need it.
I think one of the times that we talked to the sheriff about this before, it really was that he's not just in town, he's up in the mountains and he's patrolling in different terrain. So that was a concern of his as well, but we can have the conversation a little bit more. Okay. Any other questions on vehicles before we move into capital financing?
Yeah.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you for your time.
We're going to turn to our finance team. Matt Evans and Melissa Moore to lead us through a discussion of capital financing today.
Oh, you can drive.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us. So we've heard from staff about the capital review process, updates on the current major capital projects and where we are in the FY27 capital planning process. So now we're going to turn our conversation over to paying for capital with a heavy focus on debt or loans to fund large capital projects. Please stop me at any time if you have questions or you need me to dig into a topic further. So when we say capital financing, we are referring to debt. Debt is a mechanism, right? Maybe not a source, but a mechanism to pay for capital projects where the county borrows a certain amount of principal to be paid back with an additional amount of interest. Principal is the base amount of a project, which is typically derived through the budget process, the planning process with capital, and interest is the cost to borrow that money. The interest rates do fluctuate. All sorts of factors contribute to that. We call the annual payback of both principal and interest debt service. So when you hear us say debt service, that's your annual payback of principal and interest. When we go out to issue debt or negotiate a bank loan, we like to have debt payment schedules so the annual payments of that debt match the useful life of an asset, okay? There are many types of debt available to local governments, so Buncombe County. And in this discussion, we're gonna talk about some common types of debt that we utilize here at Buncombe County, notably limited obligation bonds, or you've heard us say LOBs, general obligation bonds, or GOs, as the public likes to say, and bank loans. Buncombe County has utilized a variety of debt options over recent years, notably general obligation bonds, limited obligation bonds, and bank loans. Here we're going to discuss the properties of each, common characteristics, and when we found it best to use each type. So GO bonds are voter-approved bonds backed by or secured by the county's full faith and credit, which means our taxing power. When investors purchase our bonds, they want some surety that we will pay them not only the principal they let us borrow, but also interest. You're going to hear me say the word collateral, which is security to a lender or bond purchaser that we are going to pay them their money back or they have a way to recoup their money back. You all are familiar with this concept. If you're a homeowner with a mortgage, chances are your house, aka your asset, the asset, is the security or collateral. If you have a car loan, your car is the security. You don't pay the money back, they come get the car. Same sort of idea here. So since collateral for GO bonds, or the security to pay the bonds back, is the full taxing power of the county, GO bonds generally have lower interest rates and are usually attractive to investors. GO bonds go through a referendum, meaning that voters have to pass it in order for us to issue the debt. And what it does is, when you do the referendum, it creates an authorized amount, which we would then use that amount to go out and issue debt against that amount. So common misconception is, let's look at 2022, we did a GO bond referendum, $70 million in authorized amount. We didn't go out and issue $70 million in debt. We are currently going against that $70 million. So that's a common thing that we hear. Because of the referendum process, GO bonds have a high level of transparency for the public, so much so that issuers, so us, we are required to include tax rate implications and estimated interest costs on the ballot. In our 2022 deal, the legislation that made us add more transparency, we barely got in there before the change. So any new GO bonds we would do, we would have to factor that in. GO bonds are ideal for large dollar capital projects with a long life, such as new construction. In Buncombe County, you're aware that we've utilized GO bonds for affordable housing and open space projects. Across the state, we see general obligation bonds used for school construction, government building construction, certain parks and recreation projects. There's a list dictated by statute, so if you go to this thing called the Bond Act, it dictates what we can issue GO bonds for. So we'll circle back on the topic of GO bonds later in this discussion.
And Matt, just to be clear, so what you were saying earlier about the 70 million, so it's as the projects come to fruition and there's the need, that's when we go out for those. So it's over the life of those bonds. And you have up until how long with bonds? Is it 7 years?
Correct, and then there's an extension period if we need it.
All right.
And that's exactly true. So we're doing two things. John's talking to you about the budget, and we're utilizing that information. And then we're also trying to keep a pulse on cash flows and when we would need to issue bonds so we have enough money up front if we need it, but maybe not too long up front, or we haven't waited too long to pay ourselves back. So the term limited obligation bond is a bit misleading, okay? Limited obligation bonds are these things they call installment financing. They're not bonds in the sense of a general obligation bond. They are installment financings. And that really just means it's a mechanism in which something is financed over time via a contract or agreement. The collateral, right, the surety that will pay something back or folks can recoup their money, is the asset, right? GO bonds was the taxing power. Now we're moving into this contract type situation where the asset or a portion of the asset is the security. So
To illustrate that, let's say we finance a major renovation at the courthouse becomes the collateral, or a portion of the courthouse. If we use this type of debt for school repairs, the school becomes part of the collateral, and that's come into fruition in the past where they sign it over and then we use it in the collateral and sign it back when we're done. But we generally need to own the asset. LOBs are not backed by the full taxing power of the county and generally have higher interest rates than GO bonds. LOBs are ideal for major projects, but they're also good for those interim or phased projects where North Carolina state statute allows, okay? LOBs are the highest frequency of debt mechanism the county utilizes, but this doesn't mean that we should always use a LOB to finance capital. We gauge the type of projects we need financed. We work with North Carolina. We look at the statutes to see what we can do. We look at the terms needed. We look at interest rates, et cetera, and that goes into the decision-making of the type of debt we go for. I also wanted to note bank loans. Bank loans are also an installment financing. So if you look at a spectrum, bank loans are more simple and LOBs are more complicated. But we usually solicit banks and lenders for vehicles or equipment. So we did a recent one, I believe last year, I think it was last year, where we financed some equipment for Dane, compactor for solid waste, I'm sorry, and we got some cars in there as well. So, but issuing debt or committing to a loan at the local government level is a very regulation-heavy process. The state has oversight in most of the deals that we work, and we come to the board at various stages for approval. So you heard me say that GO bonds are high transparency. The other types also require we come to the board and there's public hearings. But if we were going to summarize this slide, take away that there are many options available for us to pay for capital projects. We start with the project, what needs to be financed, we assess the various options available, and then we gauge what will produce the cheapest interest.
And Matt, just a clarification, because that's interesting about limited obligation bonds. And they're not actually bonds?
They're not in the sense of like, you go to a market to sell a limited obligation bond, but they're contracts. They're very convoluted contracts, and there's certain languages in there, but it's not the same sense as a general obligation bond.
Okay, so you do still go to the bond market?
We do.
Yes. Okay.
So the difference between the bank loan and the limited obligation is they're contracts, but one we go to the market to sell, and one we go with a lender. Bank loans could even be something as simple as working with a vendor. Like let's say solid waste needed a CAT piece of equipment, we would gauge, is a vendor contract producing better rates or is a bank loan producing better rates? So that's kind of the process there.
Thank you.
One of the takeaways I've always tried to keep clear in my head is which one has the best interest rates. I can't imagine it. What would the scenario be where a LOB would have a better interest rate than a GO bond? Because I figured for collateral purposes, it's always going to be the GO bond.
Yeah, so when you go to your rating agencies, your general obligation bonds are always going to be, for us, we have a AAA rating. And because you have the collateral of your tax base, so if should anything happen, your debtors, your investors would be paid first. So that first dollar of taxes that come in, no matter what else, other obligations, they have first priority. That's what they mean by the full faith of your tax base, right? Whereas your LOBs, the collateral is the asset itself, okay? So when the rating agencies look at the risk, your tax base at a AAA rating, they're going to put your LOBs at just one notch lower. So when we talk about the cost of capital and your interest rate for a LOBs deal to be higher interest rate, with our quality of credit, we're not perceived as a risk anyways because of the GO at AAA. So you're talking about maybe, don't quote me on rates because rates change, but you're talking about the difference of like 25 to 50 basis points. Now, over large millions of dollars, that does add up, but you're not talking about a huge material difference. So whereas your additional cost to issue LOB is on that difference, that spread on that interest rate, whereas you do have additional operating cost to take a GO bond to the voter and prepare for that and do a referendum. So you've got different costs and different components of those. Both deals, I do want to add, you do have to make an application to the local government commission to issue the bonds. So Commissioner Wells, you asked about once you have a voter approval to issue GO bonds, you have those bonds authorized. We don't issue them until we need them. And the LGC does closely watch. They do not let us just because the voters approve them, go ahead and issue them. We have to make an application, go before them, and justify why we're ready to spend the money before they say, yes, you can issue those bonds. So there's a considerable amount of oversight from the state over and allowing us to issue the bonds, in addition to the required state statutes that we come before the board to authorize that as well.
Basis points is an interesting term. 100 basis points is 1%. It's just financial jargon for percentages of percentages. So, yeah, that one, we always have to sit back and think a little bit when they're saying X amount of basis points. What does that truly mean? So as we discussed on the future slides, county currently pays debt service, remember the annual principal and interest payments on the debt, in various funds. So we're talking about accounting funds here, reporting funds, with different funding sources, so revenues. Remember the mortgage example, your mortgage payments due on a regular cadence, that's the same here. We have various sources of money that we use to pay debt. The general fund uses its discretionary revenue, mainly property tax and portions of sales tax, to pay for county capital projects, and that does include vehicles, and the general obligation bond projects. You'll see on a future slide where we account for the projects for the GO bonds in a separate accounting fund. The general fund pays for that debt service. When I say, remember the taxing power, the county taxing power, that should trigger a light bulb in your brain, general fund revenue, okay, property tax. 50% of Article 39 sales tax. When you go to the store, this is kind of cool, right? Because we all do this. You go to the store and you pay 7 cents of sales tax. 1 cent of that is Article 39. 1/2 of that is currently dedicated for the school capital projects. We pay for that debt in the school capital fund, and that goes through a school capital fund commission process. That's the Asheville City Schools and Buncombe County Schools. 1/4 cent sales tax. That's you hear it as Article 46. That currently pays for AV Tech capital. And then solid waste debt is accounted for in what we call an enterprise or business type fund. And those revenues, generally tipping fees, pay for solid waste associated debt, like new landfill sales you saw the solid waste director point out earlier, and equipment. So at the beginning of FY26, the county had approximately $461 million in outstanding debt service. Again, this includes $366 million in principal, and we're showing this a little differently today. It also includes approximately $95 million in interest. When you all usually see this donut chart, usually see the principal amount. This is the full principal and interest, so we're showing you the future debt service that we have outstanding.
Is the interest included in each of those subcategories?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So currently the debt service, annual principal and interest payments, Commissioner, will be paid through FY 2044. Issuing new debt or refinancing existing debt, and all that means is we go out and we take debt that we currently have, the market may produce better interest rates, we buy that debt back and negotiate. The interest rates become better. If those two things happen, so we issue new debt or we refinance debt, the amortizations is what we call it. The debt service payments will extend beyond FY 2044. Currently, our largest amount of debt service is attributable to public school capital at $221 million. Makes up 48% of that total outstanding debt service. General fund supported debt currently makes up around 37% of outstanding debt, which includes the affordable housing bonds issued in FY 2024. The remaining debt service is distributed between AB Tech Capital, PDF Woodfin. That was an incremental tax financing deal. It's another type of debt that we did at one point, and the solid waste fund. So the next slides, we're going to focus on the future. They're going to have many assumptions, and they're subject to change. You've heard John and Jay say that we're still working on things. But the intention is to continue a discussion that we started at your retreat in November and drill in a bit further. Do you have a thought? Okay, so in November, we presented to the board that annual capital costs will no doubt rise in the foreseeable future. To what extent is still being modeled as our FY27 capital planning process takes place. Additionally, the finance department is in the early stages of what will most likely be 2 debt issuances by the end of this current fiscal year. A general obligation issuance against that 2022 referendum and a limited obligation deal for county and public school projects. On this slide, we focus on a high-level outlook for the general fund. In blue, we see existing annual debt service, and that existing debt service is approximately $18.3 million in the current year and slightly jumps up in FY27. That was due to a refunding that we did where we took the savings and front-loaded them. So the existing debt will jump back up next fiscal year. In light green, we see estimated annual debt service amounts attributable to approved prior year CIP projects and the remaining $55 million against that GO bond authorization. So that light blue is projects that you all have adopted in the past through the CIP process that we need to issue debt on, as well as the remaining $55 million that's left of that $70 million authorization. And then, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but this slide's kind of my big question for the day, which is I'm looking for more context and perspective on, I guess, how big these numbers are and how significant this is across time, I guess, in comparison to, well, I look for context for however you want to give it to me, but perhaps looking back 10 years for where we've come from, perhaps adjusted for inflation would be helpful too. But.
So your general funds traditionally had about $20 million-ish in debt service. And you can see here that the numbers far exceed $20 million. So that's the context at the highest level that it could be. So through events that happen, debt falling off and new debt coming on, it's typically been $20, $22 million a year. It was 18.3 due to the savings of the refinancing, but we're headed in an upward direction.
In a unique way across the last 20 years?
We have a lot of capital that we need to pay for. And when we have deferred that capital, this is how it comes into fruition. Now, these numbers, as you just heard me say, include the approved prior year amounts, but also what Jay and John have been working on with the capital group. There's going to be, assumption, we're going to keep working through this, but numbers are going to go up.
The light blue on this graph is on the handout we gave you where we shaded projects yellow that haven't gone out to debt yet. That's what the light blue is. So there are projects we're already working on that still require debt.
Yeah. Thanks.
Did that answer your question? I didn't feel like it.
Yeah, I guess I've been, you've showed us something similar before. I think it was the month before Helene last time I remember thinking about this. And I can tell and can see that the numbers are going up and that this is a significant moment in the future of our capital outlook. But how significant is it compared to where we were 15 years ago?
That's what I thought you were saying.
How big of a deal is this, I guess?
And so what Matt mentioned is for years, we've been at the $20 million in debt service in the general fund. This is not the schools, this is just general fund. And it seems as if we try to maintain that percentage of our fund balance, of our property tax in debt service, which is about 3 cents right now in today's market. So 20 million at 18, I guess, $18.3 million at $5 million per penny gives you about 3 cents of debt service. We've maintained that 20 million now for a while. And what we're showing you today from this morning's conversation, there is maintenance and projects that we need to do. So that going from 20 million in 2026 to 2032, almost 50 million, you're about doubling what we've pretty much spent in the past on debt service, just for general fund projects. This is talking about CIP projects, the GO bonds that were already authorized, and vehicles. So it's a significant increase in what we're doing today to what we're projecting for the next 7 years.
We are looking at about $10 million more in debt payments next year than this year.
Yeah, okay, that's good perspective.
So if all things held consistent here, if we went through the budget process, you would have John come to you and say, we need to build in $30.2 million, which is significantly higher than $18.3 million. And right now, we're in a vacuum talking about capital, and you know you're gonna have to balance that against the operating budget. So that's the significance of it. Yeah. The debt that we've issued over the past years has leaned more heavy towards the public schools and other funds that it's accounted for, and you haven't had to weigh the priorities of operating and capital as much as you're gonna have to this year.
In the general fund.
In the
That's
general
been
fund.
always so.
Yeah. Also want to look at the debt outlook for the public schools and community college. Currently, each of these are paid for by non-general fund and statute designated revenue sources. The public schools debt, remember, paid by the 50% of Article 39 sales tax, helps us pay for projects that have gone through the School Capital Fund Commission as existing debt service represented in blue there on the left of the slide. Falls off, we anticipate more debt coming online, totaling an estimated $25 to $26 million annual debt service. 50% of Article 39 sales tax generates approximately 28 to 29 million. So you're seeing 29 million coming in and every year, and then 25, 26 million going out the door to offset that debt service. AB Tech related or community college related debt service, we currently aren't anticipating new debt service at this time. The Article 46 sales tax revenue generates approximately $19 million annually, which offsets this $5 to $6 million annual debt service and any additional PAYGO capital. PAYGO is we just pay it annually with cash that we have that exists in the fund. The legislation that prescribes Article 46 funds to be spent on capital for the community college does sunset at the end of FY27. So we will need to work out the mechanics of how that revenue, their existing debt service, and the capital costs are going to be addressed going forward.
And Matt, so I just want to make sure, so on the public schools, annual revenue is around 28 million, and on the Article 46, it's around 19 million?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And when that sunsets, though, that $0.25 could then be used for other
Correct.
county capital projects.
But we would assume that debt in the general
Yeah.
fund as well.
Yeah, the thought is the debt doesn't go away. So.
Thanks.
So as you remember, we began issuing general obligation bonds as a result of the referendum for affordable housing and open space in 2022. $40 million bond for affordable housing has allocated $30 million for projects established by the board, leaving $10 million remaining. The 2030 strategic plan recently adopted by the board sets a goal of development of 1,500 to 1,850 rental units at under 80% average median income. With a portion of these units supported by the 30 million on established projects or annual funding, we have a gap of around 800 units to meet the high end of this goal. Using remaining bond funds and annual funding could close that gap. To realize the goal using additional general obligation bond funding, we would be looking at issuing an additional $38 to $53 million in bonds. The $30 million bond for open space has allocated $22.2 million in established projects. The 2030 strategic plan sets a goal of conservation of 20% of the county's total acreage and assumes that to reach that number, 3,500 additional acres will need to be conserved over the next 5 years. Estimated costs via general obligation bonds for this purpose would be $10 million.
So county staff have worked to identify various major projects that could qualify for additional general obligation bonds. Over the next few slides, I'm going to show you that graph that we looked at earlier, and we're just going to keep stacking on costs. We've pulled approximately $131 million from the latest CIP draft, so those numbers that you just looked at with Jay and John, representing library facilities, parks and rec facility, and the EMS bases. And we've also built in scenarios for this affordable, what you just heard John say about the affordable housing needs and the open space needs. So we've baked these into slides going forward. I also want to note that Buncombe County Schools has identified approximately $162 million in projects that could be contenders for general obligation bonds. That's $46 million for Glen Arden's new construction, approximately $32 million to finish major renovations at W.D. Williams, and there's an additional $84 million in major renovations and security upgrades. Buncombe County Schools will present on these in the future. Asheville City Schools is currently working on a facility assessment. It was not ready to identify additional projects outside of the School Capital Fund Commission at this time. So over the next few slides, we're going to take a look at the general fund capital outlook. I shared this slide with you earlier, and we are now adding on or stacking on additional GO bond scenarios so that we can visualize the significance. I think that's a good way to put it, Commissioner. So here we add on a new housing bond, fully loaded at the max to meet that 2030 strategic plan goal. We see an approximate estimated $4.2 to $4.6 million annual impact. By 2032 and 2033, our estimated annual capital cost is nearly 3 times what it is in our current FY26 budget. And y'all stop me at any point in time here. Now we add on an additional bond for open space at roughly $10 million to satisfy the remaining acreage needed per our strategic plan. This would equate to somewhere between $750,000 to $850,000 on top. If the board decides to use the general fund to fund additional school capital, Glen Arden Elementary GO bond can add an additional $3.5 to $3.9 million annually.
Sorry, can you repeat that? That's just the one school, the estimated cost of the one school.
That's correct. Yes. That's correct.
We use the general fund to fund the schools, to build the schools. When we have the,
it's a great question, sir. So
it doesn't make sense to me.
We
Go
have,
ahead.
you heard me say earlier in the School Capital Fund Commission, the revenues only bring in approximately $29 million. The estimated annual debt service that would take away from that annual revenue is approximately $25 to $26 million. So we would hit a capacity issue there.
Are we looking at, though, and the schools have done this, they are predicting that in the next 10 years, the school population will be decreasing. Now, are we looking at that before we commit to spending?
So Commissioner, we're not making a recommendation on whether or not you should use general fund to fund the schools. What we're showing you is the cost of what that will look like.
Okay.
The schools have a need for a new school in Glen Arden, and they need major renovations at W.D. Williams. So what we're showing you is how you could provide for that if you use general fund. But we're not asking for a decision today, nor are we making a recommendation to you. This is purely informational for your use.
So we'll keep going. If we add in the W.D. Williams amount, that's approximately $2.4 to $2.7 million annually. Okay. So we're moving by 2033, could be $59 million. And we're sitting currently at 18.3. Lastly, if we add in everything that was presented to the School Capital Fund Commission as a contender, and again, they will come to you all, we're going to be nearly 3.5 times where we currently are. And Commissioner Sloan, you asked about significance. We took all these numbers and illustrated them expressed in tax cents. So how much of the property tax rate are you using to pay for capital? Currently, 3.47 cents, and that is a very busy slide. But what it does is it incrementally stacks on the estimated annual impact expressed in cents as you would go forward. It's the same numbers, but a different look at that.
And then another question, Matt, so with these numbers that you are using on the various slides, is that based on 5% interest, most of these?
I actually walked it back a little bit. So the GO bond stuff, I'm looking at 3.5, and the non-GO bond stuff, I'm looking at 4. As we go on with the LGC and have conversations and we start to do these student debt deals this year, we're going to get better understanding of what rates will actually be looking like.
Okay, so these slides are, they're
3.5. All the GO bonds are 3.5.
3.5.
The lobs are 4.
And the lobs are 4. Okay, thanks.
And we have seen between anywhere in the 3s and 4s, so for debt deals. The main takeaway here, y'all, is debt is an ongoing expenditure and you need an ongoing revenue source to address it, okay? And we know that, again, we've only been talking about capital so far. You haven't even gotten to the operating stuff yet, so. Any questions?
And then, are you estimating basically about for every 7 million is about, equates to 1 cent? Is that where we're going?
Well, slightly under.
Slightly.
And we have thrown some growth on.
We've
And
graduated the value of the penny each
Okay.
year
So we're-
in this scenario. 3%.
And can you unpack that last line item, additional school projects for me? Is that, maybe Terry can, is that everything?
That's everything. I can unpack it for you today. Yeah.
That's the 84 million if you want to go back.
And that includes,
It's probably W.D. Williams, Glenn
Yeah.
Arden.
Those are separated.
it is,
I thought he said it was, I
So
think all
if
of
you're
it.
looking at that slide, we had a line for WD Williams, a line for Arden, and then on there were
school
security
security.
updates, and,
it's Glen Arden. Glen Arden's its own, and then W. Williams was its own. So the remaining amount was North Buncombe High mechanical system upgrade. That was $30 million. Front office security reconfigurations district-wide, that's another approximate $30 million. And then Estes Elementary School, major renovations, that was $22 million. And then there was a countywide transportation department renovation project that they included that was approximately $2 million.
And this doesn't include the projects that come to the Capital Commission. I'm gonna call them the smaller ones, a classroom renovation. Correct. You know, sports field, et cetera.
I didn't hear anything from ACS in there at all.
ACS is working through a facility plan, and they want to make sure that the numbers they present are founded in something, so.
So the 84 million plus is not, like, none of that is
That's
stuff
all
you're
BCS.
currently considering on the school capital commission?
Now, those projects do come through the School Capital Fund Commission.
But it's not all of them that would be considered.
yes,
And
these are pulled apart.
Pulled apart,
There'll be additional projects going to school capital.
And to Commissioner Whiteside's point, I'm looking at Ronnie, I do think that the ACS study does look at future enrollment in school needs.
If I can re-say that in a different way, we have a very extensive list of capital projects that are presented to the School Capital Fund Commission. We have extracted some of those projects, and the remaining list still remains to be evaluated through the School Capital Fund Commission.
Yeah.
So I know we are close to reaching time, so I'm not going to take much time, and we have plenty of time to come back and revisit this. But as we look to the near future and plan for increased investments in our capital needs, it is a recommendation that we establish a debt service fund. What a debt service fund is a specialized governmental accounting fund used by local governments to manage and pay for your long-term debt obligations, such as your bonds or your bank notes. So there's many benefits to a debt service fund, and I will just cover them quickly. So the benefits of creating a separate debt service fund is it really ensures accountability and transparency. So when you segregate these funds, the resources are dedicated to the repayment of debt from your general operating funds. Segregation prevents funds that are intended for debt service to be diverted for other uses. It also provides a clear picture, which is increased transparency to your taxpayers, to your auditors, to our credit rating agencies, as well as our investors, on exactly how our debt obligations are being managed. And that process alone and that visibility and transparency really builds public trust. So as we look to going back to the debt market and revisiting with our rating agencies to help secure and maintain that AAA credit rating, a debt service fund is going to continue to build that credibility and easier for them to continue to analyze just exactly how secure our funding and fiscal sustainability is. So a debt service fund is also going to support budgeting and financial planning. The funds that would go into this would also earn interest income. So that also helps to reduce, as those funds build, the obligation for that amount of revenue. So just very quickly, what it would require to create this fund, the board would have to take action and approve a resolution to establish the fund. The resolution would have to state what the purpose of the fund is. The fund would have to be included in our budget ordinance, as well as being included as a fund in our audit, so as all of the other funds are, right? So, any questions about a debt service fund?
So we could do this as part of our budget process. Something that really spoke to me, Melissa, is I think we are continuing daily to still build public trust in Buncombe County. And I would like for us to consider this as part of our budget process this year. Yes, Avril?
Yeah, the reason we're asking and talking about a debt service fund today is if you choose to go down the GR route, we will want to set up that fund to start putting that money aside today before we even issue it to Commissioner Wells's question. We would want to set those pennies aside, whatever the amount that we get issued during that GR referendum, to start building that. To Melissa's point, it starts to generate interest on that money, so at some point, we're not looking at a 9-cent tax rate for debt service.
Correct.
You're actually looking for something less because that money is set aside and start to grow interest. So we currently have a line item in our budget for debt service.
Right.
So when we talk about the transparency piece, is to show the residents, if you vote for this bond, here's how we're going to repay that bond, and the money starts to set aside and is pulled aside that they can see that. So the two goes hand in hand. Yes, the referendum for whatever you're doing, if it's going to be affordable housing, if it's going to be open space, or if it's going to be schools, or whatever you decide to do. When you do that, we want to set up that fund to start setting that money aside.
Thank you for a further explanation.
Okay, thanks. So if we decide to proceed with that and the voters approved it,
Yes.
then that would be the time to set that up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What I like about the debt service fund, as a taxpayer, it becomes more transparent. And we talk about transparency, but this is showing what we're doing.
Alternatively, if you want to set that up now, you can set it up and move the money from the general fund and put it over there, so transparency, so that will be paying back your lobs. You can do that to show transparency if you're talking about transparency, and that's the only reason that you want to do that is for the transparency side. What we are proposing is, in addition to that transparency, you start to set aside this money to start to grow and bear interest.
As a reminder, we are looking at $10 million more in debt payments in '27 than current year.
Thanks for that reminder, John.
We are running up against time. Is there anything else that I'll need to, we threw a lot at you today. So is there anything else that you folks need to talk about before we cover today?
Thanks for all the good
Yeah,
information.
this is great. And thanks to all the staff who presented to us today as well. We appreciate y'all.
So
All right, we have some next steps.
our next steps in our budget process, department budget requests are due next week. We expect initial property tax estimates from our property assessor in March, at which time we will generate revenue estimates and calculate a revenue neutral tax rate per statute. And we will bring that information along with the first pass budget to you on March 24th. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Avril. Commissioners, before we call for a motion to adjourn, I have been asked to give an update on the weather situation. And so I do have some information I'm going to share with you all, that across the state of North Carolina, emergency services personnel are working to get ready for the storm that is indeed heading our way. A winter storm watch is in effect from 7 a.m. Saturday to 1 p.m. Monday. The forecast has trended toward greater impacts from ice and sleet and less impacts from snow. As we all know, ice and freezing rain create incredibly hazardous conditions for our area. Our emergency services team has been working to prepare, and at 1 p.m., Buncombe County will hold a community briefing that will stream live on Facebook. At that briefing, we will also receive updates from North Carolina Highway Patrol, Duke Energy, the City of Asheville, and Black Mountain Fire Department. For those of you who are listening, it is important to take this storm seriously. The time to prepare is right now. Make sure you have enough food and water on hand for several days, ensure any prescriptions are filled, and make a plan for what you will do if you lose power. And once that is done, please check in on your neighbors.
especially elderly or more vulnerable neighbors. There are a number of resources to help you prepare, including a list of important phone numbers that will help during an emergency at buncombeready.org. Our community has proven that we're resilient and passionate about helping our neighbors. Those strengths will no doubt be critical to our community's well-being as we prepare for yet another storm. All right, you all, thank you. I do need a motion to adjourn. I heard Commissioner Whitesides will commit Commissioner Horton to second. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thanks so much, y'all.